Call this meeting to order, and we'll stand for the pledge and a moment of silence in remembrance of the tragic accident on Highway 10 north of Clear Lake, and the members and families of all of those members. Keep them in our thoughts. I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looking for a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Felber.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Schubacher. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Meeting's agenda is approved. Anyone for open forum?
There is nobody signed up, Board Chair.
Okay. Then we'll move on to under our proclamations. First one, I'll just say that this will be her last meeting as the county attorney for Sherburne County, and in that honor of that, we're going to have a proclamation honoring Kathy. And today, whereas Kathleen Haney will retire April 30th, 2025, after more than 30 years of outstanding and meritorious service to Sherburne County, 22 which have been as elected Sherburne County attorney. Whereas Kathy began her first elected term as Sherburne County attorney in January of 2003. During her tenure, she has been active with many organizations, including the Minnesota County Attorneys Association, Civil Law Committee, Child Support Task Force, and the MCAA Educational Committee. Whereas Kathy has earned many accolades over her career, including the Johnson Distinguished Service Award by Minnesota Attorneys Association, wherein she was recognized by her colleagues for her ongoing support as a resource and mentor. Whereas throughout her career, Kathy has demonstrated a history of significant leadership, strived to improve the quality of justice, and increase the enhanced public awareness of the office of the county attorney at the state and our national level, all while adhering to the highest ethical standards of legal profession, providing her staff, colleagues, and friends an empathetic listening ear when asked, and a sympathetic shoulder when needed, a firm and well-thought recommendation when warranted, and a calm voice during times of challenge. Whereas, in reluctantly accepting Kathy's announced retirement, the Sherburne County Board of Commissioners congratulates Kathy on her culmination of amazing career in service to Sherburne County. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Sherburne County Board of Commissioners do hereby extend to Kathy our sincere and grateful appreciation for her dedicated service to our community, and congratulations on her well-earned retirement, and our best wishes for continued success, happiness, and good health in the years to come. Be it further resolved that the Sherburne County Board of Commissioners joins with the county staff and so many throughout the community in wishing Kathy all the best in her retirement by declaring April 30th, 2025 as Kathleen Haney Day here in Sherburne County.
So before you vote on that proclamation, I think,
Speech?
I hope you open up the microphone for a second. Get a chance. Kathy can say the last word because she always gets the last word. But I just want to say on behalf of staff and me personally, I got a chance to work with Kathy now some 6 years. It has been a true honor and a privilege. Kathy is the consummate professional, but more importantly, she is a colleague and a friend. And I know that we can speak on behalf of a lot of folks to say, Kathy, we're going to miss your guidance, your friendly smile, and also your leadership when it's especially needed. And I want to thank you for all that you've done for us and for me personally. Thanks.
I'll concur with Bruce. I've dealt with Kathy since I became on the township board in 2004, so a long time. Yeah, the calming voice that you always had for everyone, I think resonates to everybody, and we appreciate it. And as much as you probably don't think so, you will be a loss that you're not going to be at that seat anymore. Thank you.
I'd also like to say thank you so much, Kathy. I've worked with you on and off over 16 years now, I think. Started with the city, and I can't thank you enough for all that you did when you did come to give us updates at the city level and what you've done for our county. is beyond measure, and you are so dedicated. You are definitely one of those people that is going to take probably 4 or 5 to replace you, because that's how dedicated you are. So thank you very much, and I wish you much happiness in your retirement.
Thank you.
So with that, I'll make the motion reluctantly, but not reluctantly, to approve what it is we're doing in the proclamation and honoring.
We have a motion by Commissioner Danielowski.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Felber seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
We're gonna miss you
We're going to miss you.
very much.
Mr. Chair, may I?
You may.
Aye, thank you. Mr. Chair and Commissioners, thank you for the accolades. It's very kind of you. Your words are very gracious. And after 22 years as county attorney, I'd like to reflect a little bit. I go back to my beginning when I started, my undergraduate was actually in business, focusing on economics, and so I'm always interested in structure. And this is going to be somewhat circuitous, but I'm getting to my point. I've been both in private sector and I've been in public sector, and I have to tell you, my heart always lies in public sector for service. One thing that I've observed is the organizational structure that the county has, and it's very unique if you look at it compared to private sector and business. You have the county board, you have the county attorney, the sheriff, smiling, county auditor, treasurer, and the county recorder. And we all have these statutory duties that are assigned to us. And what's interesting about that is because even though we all have separate powers and we all serve the public, in a lot of ways we're co-equal. But because of our roles, we have to integrate ourselves, and de facto it becomes a partnership. And when I say co-equal, I mean that we're co-equal in the sense that we all serve the citizens of this county. The partnership is not unfamiliar to us. I mean, we have joint powers agreements, it's codified in law. I have working relationships with my cities, with my sister counties. And what's interesting is the strength of the partnership doesn't lie in agreement, it lies in the ability to disagree. And that's where I have to give this board kudos. What I've found is that you work very hard to acknowledge disagreement and differing positions. And yet at the same time, you give respect to each other and to all of the electeds. And kudos to you. That's an amazing strength. And because of that strength, I think you better serve the citizens of this county. And for that, I thank you. And I thank you for the partnership. It has meant a great deal to me. And that's how the circuitous route was, to get down to my thanks to you all. I take great pride in the people I work with. I'm very happy because I'm leaving you with incredibly capable individuals, just marvelous. And I thank you. That was short and sweet. Yeah, I know.
Oh, my
I
goodness.
get paid by the hour or the word.
And I just want to say that, and as much as Kathy follows the standards of the law all the time, I got an email on a Monday morning, and for all of you that know, I'm up in Clear Lake, 30 miles away, and Kathy asked me to come to the county offices, and I'm wondering why. On a Monday morning, this is must be kind of important. So I sent her an email, and I thought, why can't I just do this by email? Why can't I do whatever she's got by the phone? She said, no, it'd be better if I came to the county courthouse. And I did. And I walked into her office, and she handed me her resignation letter. And I said, couldn't we have done this over the phone? I just drove 30 miles. And she said, no, by statute, I'm supposed to give you this in person. And I kind of went, oh, okay. So I drove 30 miles to get her resignation, and in person. So just the detail, that's a level of detail that she exudes by. And I think that's going to be huge shoes to fill. We appreciate your service.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Number 2, consider approval of proclamation declaring May 4th through the 10th at 2025 is Correctional Officers Week in Sherburne County. I have listed as Joel Brott, but no, he's passed the buck. Dave?
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm going to read the proclamation for the National Correctional Officers Week for 2025. Whereas in 1987, Congress passed and President Ronald Reagan signed the Public Law 99-611, proclaiming the first week of May as National Correctional Officers Week. Whereas the operation of a correctional and detentional facility represents a crucial component of our criminal justice system, and whereas correctional officers play a vital role protecting the rights of the public to be safeguarded from criminal activity, whereas correctional personnel are responsible for the safety and dignity of the human beings charged with their care, whereas the correctional personnel work under demanding circumstances, face danger in their daily work lives, often sacrificing personal and family time to provide necessary but thankless, unrecognized, behind-the-scenes services to the public. And whereas the staff of Sherburne County Sheriff's Office have been continually demonstrating their skills, professionalism in running one of the finest facilities in the state. Therefore, it be resolved that the Sherburne County Board of Commissioners proclaim the week of May 4th to the 10th, 2025 as Correctional Officers Week in Sherburne County, encourage citizens to recognize commitment, outstanding contributions made to the Sherburne County's correctional personnel.
I would move that we pass the proclamation.
We have a motion by Commissioner Felber
I'll
And a
second.
second?
Oops, sorry.
and a second by Commissioner Hulls. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say that being a correctional officer is one of the harder jobs you can do. I mean, I worked for 6 years in the Hennepin County Adult Detention Center, and I clearly couldn't hack it because I chose to go to the road instead of working inside. It's a very, very difficult career, and the people that do it are able to do it as a full career. You have to be very, very dedicated. You have to be very, very resilient, and you have to be able to adapt to a lot of crisis situations and still be able to have empathy for the people that are incarcerated. It's just a very, very difficult job, and we have to really appreciate the people that do make their careers in corrections for us.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Schumacher.
when I'm new in the role as the county commissioner, and the thing that really set it apart for me was when I was in the conversation with you guys, and you guys were discussing, today's inmate is tomorrow's neighbor, and always remembering that, in the sharing the empathy and kind of the conversation that says, we do our best to make sure they're prepared to come back in, to enter back into the community. So I thank you guys for that, and yep, the job is extremely difficult. I can't even imagine all the aspects of the days and the conversations.
Mr. Chair, I just want to say, I'm happy that we're able to recognize this as a week honoring our correctional officers, but I also want to remember that every day you show up to do a very difficult job, and we all need to remember what it is that they do in order to serve and protect in very challenging times and dealing with very challenging individuals at times, but also recognizing, like, when they come out, you're hoping that they will then become a neighbor and be someone that is going to follow the straight and narrow, and hopefully through interaction with our awesome correctional staff. So thank you for what you do every single day.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 3, consider approval of proclamation declaring May as National Military Appreciation Month. I'm going to turn this over to Commissioner Hulls.
Thank you very much. I'll go ahead and read the proclamation. Whereas for generations, the freedom and security enjoyed by the citizens of the United States are direct results of the continued vigilance and service of the United States Armed Forces over the history of our great nation. And whereas the sacrifices of those who serve, those currently serving, and the family members who support them have preserved the liberties and have enriched our great nation, making it unique in the world community. And whereas in 1999, the United States Congress passed a resolution proclaiming May as National Military Appreciation Month, encouraging all citizens to honor current and former members of the U.S. Armed Services and their families, including those who made the ultimate sacrifice. And whereas the month of May was selected for this display of patriotism, as during this month we celebrate Loyalty Day on May 1st, the National Day of Prayer, May 1st, Victory in Europe Day, May 8th, Military Spouse Day, May 9th, Armed Forces Day, May 17th, and Memorial Day, May 26th. And whereas during Military Appreciation Month, we're reminded of the important role the United States Armed Forces have played in the history and development of our country and state, and our responsibility as Americans to support and honor the selfless sacrifice of our military families. And now, therefore, be it resolved, Sherburne County hereby proclaims the month of May 2025 as Military Appreciation Month in Sherburne County to recognize our community's service members and veterans, and to remember with deep gratitude the women and men who have given their lives in defense of our freedoms.
I'll move that we pass this resolution.
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Felber, second by Commissioner Danielowski. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Halls?
I'd just like to take a moment. Obviously, I'm a veteran, and I've spent 9 years active and another 4 in the reserves, did 3 deployments. And an image that's always stuck with me was I was overseas I won't name the country, in a particular country, and I was on leave, and I was walking down the street, and there was some of that country's military walking down the street, and some random person just came up and spat on them. And I come back here to the U.S. after Desert Shield, and there was nothing but appreciation and nothing but accolades. And people to this day still thank me for my service. And I think the contrast there is remarkable. And so I appreciate the gratitude that the public shows our military. Our military doesn't get to choose where they go fight. They just follow the orders. And so it's with deep gratitude that I appreciate the general public and their support of our armed services.
Thank you.
You said it very well, and I concur wholeheartedly. The people that serve to protect our country, protect our freedoms, you just can't thank them enough. And I thank them every day for being willing to do that on behalf of us as the United States. Thank you so much for your service.
Anyone else?
Yeah, you just can't say enough to thank the veterans. I mean, it's just people to step up to serve, particularly when there's a really good chance that you could be deployed. I mean, that's just, you can't say enough. So absolutely do appreciate them.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. I'd just like to say that we spent about 15 minutes here on proclamations and things of that nature, and we do this periodically throughout the year, different proclamations for different things. I don't think any one of us take these lightly. This is not just window dressing. We sincerely appreciate what's going on with all these proclamations and recognitions, and I'd just like to thank everyone and what you've done for that. So moving on, we're going to head to the consent agenda. Bruce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. We do have a request that items 5, 15, and 17 be removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration. And again, I'll repeat those items 5, 15, and 17.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with those stated items 5, 15, and 17 removed for separate consideration.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Danielowski, a second by Commissioner Felber. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Bruce, do you want to take these in any certain order?
I think a numerical order is fine. So the first one is item 5 with respect to consideration for approval of a recommended revision and update to the county land transaction policy. I had 2 county commissioners who expressed a request for separate consideration, and I'll defer to the commissioners to lead the conversation.
I'll start with that, if that's okay. What I'd really like to do, because this has so much to do with the comprehensive plans that we're going to be taking a look at over the next few months. I would like to table this until July 22nd, 2025. There's just some strenuous objection to that.
What was the date you wanted to table it till?
July 22nd, just basically picking 90 days out
Okay.
to give us time to go through all the other stuff and reconsiderations of it. Any objections, then I will motion that we table this item until January 22nd, July 22nd, 2025.
We have a motion to table. Is there a second?
Well, I have a question.
Well, from a procedural standpoint, if it doesn't get a second, you just discuss it. But a motion to table is non-discussable, non-debatable. So if there's no second, then continue discussions. If there's a second, you can discuss tabling, but the actual item would not be discussed then.
Motion fails for lack of a second.
Okay.
All right, so I have also wanted to pull this particular one. I understand Commissioner Felber's desire to table it, but as I read this particular proclamation, it references the comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan is what we're going to take a look at. So no matter, in my particular viewpoint, regardless, we can make any modification to the comprehensive plan we want to, and it will have, it won't necessarily have an impact on this particular piece. This has to follow any modifications we make to the comprehensive plan. So as long as we're diligent on what we do with the comprehensive plan, we should be fine. I did have a couple of edits for it, however. One is I requested that we add a county commissioner to the, what's it called, Land Acquisition Board? Is that the title?
Yeah, Land Acquisition Committee, or Land Transaction
Land
Committee.
Transaction Committee. I asked that we add a county commissioner to that committee so that the board is always fully informed of any transactions. The second piece is that I asked that we have language in there specific to that no non-voluntary transaction could take place without it couldn't take place on the consent agenda. It would have to be a formal vote on the regular agenda. Now, that being said, there is language in there that specifically states that this particular policy does not apply to condemnation and other transactions that would not apply. So the only transactions this policy would apply would be voluntary transactions. So people voluntarily selling their property.
Or purchasing, so.
Or purchasing the
Right.
property.
Some of this is sale of assets, which we've had, we went through that process and showed you
Right.
several parcels, so, yeah.
So, so we ended up adding one change. It already addresses my second concern with the language that's in place. And then the third piece is because this policy is secondary to the comprehensive plan, I don't see a need to table this because all the work that we do in the comprehensive plan fully applies to this policy. So if we make sweeping changes to the comprehensive plan, it still applies to this policy. This policy does not change, does not call out the strategic version of this in any way, shape, or form. So I think we're fine passing this, but we have to. But we have to be diligent on the changes that we make to the comprehensive plan. That's where the rubber hits the road. Changes to this wouldn't necessarily be relevant.
And, Mr. Chairman, and
Mr. Schumacher.
my third item on there that I had put down was that I felt like this committee assignment was really important to not be put away, and that it should be on our annual assignment list of a county board member to be put underneath our title. So it just doesn't get put away. If you could scroll the screen up, it started in 2006, and now we're here, 2023, to make a revision. So I just would like to because it's so important on land ownership that it just hits the bullet points underneath a rotating commissioner as an assignment for this committee, which was one I had emailed to the administrator as a request.
Yep, and it would be my understanding by approving that, it would hit the committee assignment.
Every
Yep.
year.
Yeah, and we could, on the second page where it says Land Transaction Committee, and it says, we would add on the very first line, a new first line, one county commissioner appointed annually.
So we are making any modifications or no? Slightly?
I would,
Wordsmith things?
I would make a motion to approve this item with the addition of adding a county commissioner to sit on the Land Transaction Review Committee. Appointed. Okay.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second.
We have a second by Commissioner Halls.
But-
Any further discussion?
Yes.
Are we adding the rest of that language too?
It's already in
It's
there.
already in there.
It's already in there.
Okay, great.
Yeah, the language in reference is on the third paragraph under purpose, the very last sentence. This policy does not apply to lands that are tax forfeited, acquisition of county right-of-way, or the condemnation process.
Okay.
So basically, it's limited to
We didn't get the
economic.
section in there, I guess I gotta reread it. We get the section in there about they have to come to the board on the open agenda?
Yeah, that's that line.
Okay,
So
all right.
It doesn't apply to anything that would be non-voluntary transactions.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, and the last thing I might not have heard, just to make sure, it was 2 county commissioners as we have in some of the other roles. I don't think that was in there. It says 1.
The second county commissioner is listed.
As long as it's listed.
As
Yeah,
we-
it's the commissioner in the district. I'm
Committee.
sorry.
Well,
Right.
let's be clear, the way it's written, it is a appointed position. We would have a commissioner assigned. I assume we would have an alternate.
Right.
And then the commissioner in whose district this transaction would take place is also informed. He or she is not necessarily on the committee, but they are informed by this policy of the transaction taking place. So there's a standing commissioner role on the committee, and then the commissioner in whose district is taking place would be informed. Does that meet your requirements?
Makes sense.
Yep.
All right, okay,
Fair enough.
all right. Okay,
We're all good?
All good.
you're all good.
All good. We have a motion by Commissioner Danielowski, a second by Commissioner Halls. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Number 15,
Before we move on, just I want to check with Dan. Do we need to have an appointment before the next board meeting? Is there a plan for this committee to meet soon?
No,
Okay,
as
so-
needed.
So we'll put an appointment on for the next board meeting, and you guys can decide who to appoint for this year.
okay,
Okay, thank you.
all right. Number 15, consider approval of budget amendments, fund transfer to the Planning and Zoning Department budget.
Commissioner Schumacher had asked that this be pulled. He, I think, had a question, and I'll defer to you.
If you could go on the screen. I just wanted to see underneath the line item of moving the money from the tax, I think it's a gravel tax budget. Revenue. You'll catch it right there. My question, yep, I do want you to explain it, yeah.
Okay, so this is a levy-saving effort. I'll just start with that. So that's the override. We collect a gravel tax. That gravel tax is building up a significant amount of money in the fund. The gravel tax can be used to offset operational costs of the organization. Separately, the Planning and Zoning Department is a fee-for-service department. So typically, we don't ask for levy dollars to support that department. Should there be shortfalls, however, in the department in any given year, it's backfilled by essentially the general fund, which is tax dollars. So looking at this year, there are 2 things that are occurring. One is, generally speaking, permit revenues are down a little bit. Typically, we do see a dip and then a rise, but we're tracking that the permit revenues may not meet projections. And second of all is normally we hire a part-time seasonal person in the summer to help Obviously, if there's not, revenues are down, we wouldn't do that. So the recommendation is that we transfer $50,000 from the gravel tax to allow us to go ahead and hire the part-time seasonal work that we would like, and to supplement the, I'll call it the salaries and personnel and cost budget, so that it doesn't fall in the general fund at the end of the year. And again, the only purpose or reason for doing this is the tax has been collected, it's in a reserve fund, and we think it would be a good use to keep it off of any levy impact for the rest of this fiscal year. Going forward, when you do your budgeting, I think we will have this as a conversation piece for this department, because it may be a potential area for you to look long-term. Similar to what we did last year, remember we did some shifting in the solid waste fund. So we have additional solid waste funds paying for some of the salaries in the department to make some cost savings there. That was done in particular because Baldwin had taken over their own planning and zoning, so we had a loss of revenue there, so we adjusted that. So this is similar to that this year.
Good.
You're good?
All good.
Okay, number 15. Somebody explain to me what we're doing for a motion.
A motion to approve or approve as amended, or a motion to, or a decline, or just don't take action.
Motion to approve.
Second that.
A motion by Commissioner Schumacher, motion second by Commissioner Felber. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Number 17.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. This item was pulled at the request of Commissioner Felber, and I'll defer to the commissioner. And I think I'm here and Andrew's here to answer any questions.
Well, this one is a particular conundrum for me because I know we need to vote for this in order to keep the process moving forward. However, it's just literally, I just want to state, I want to make sure that as I'm voting for it, I'm going to vote to move this forward, but I am adamantly opposed to any actual plan that leaves that traffic going through Monticello and going up 11. I know those are still on the table, but I would not be able to vote to actually implement those in the future, if that makes any sense at all. I just don't think that, we need to get that traffic off 11. I think the only real viable one, and the one that the people who live there ask for all the time, is to get that bridge, that new bridge, moved west of Monticello. That to me seems like the only real viable option, but yet two of them still involve putting the traffic through Monticello.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Hulse.
So just clarification for my part. So Commissioner Felber, what you're saying is you're comfortable moving forward with the study, but you're just making it clear that a couple of the options that are still on the table in your opinion are not viable options.
Yes, sir.
So you're okay with the study moving forward. You just want to set expectations from the outset that a couple of the options just aren't real viable options.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's exactly it.
Mr. Chair, for clarification too, with the Pell study, this is the process that you have to go through. And as we all know too, there is also a recommendation that nothing gets done, no build, which has to be there by the way that the federal and the state need to see this. This is a study that does not make selections. It starts to weed out ones, and then ones that have to be on the table that so it isn't identifying the study will play out. So I appreciate that. Yes, we need to support this to keep the study process moving, but you also have things on there. Like I said, there's a no build that has to be there as well. So these are just about choices, and Andrew, maybe you can clarify that as well, that this is a process you just have to go through in order to get to the end.
I mean, I get it. I sat through.
Yeah.
Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, County Commissioners. That's absolutely correct. So we're required under federal NEPA law to include the no build, which would be the existing corridor. At this point in the federal process, it is a preliminary environmental linkage document. And the next step is when we'll really start getting into the NEPA process. These alternatives will be carried forward. We know that some of them probably aren't feasible, but we have to go through that evaluation process because of federal law. We're not even allowed to say that there's a preferred option right now, because when we get into the next step, which is the Tier 1 environmental documentation, any option can come forward still. These would be the ones that we move forward based on our local preferences, but also based on federal law and federal requirements. There's also an option to build a bridge directly adjacent to the existing one. That doesn't have a lot of support from the community either, but through these environmental processes and documentation, we're not only looking at the transportation issues, but we're looking at the socioeconomic issues, the environmental issues, safety issues, everything right on down the line. So there's a broad spectrum of what we're taking a look at through these processes. So Commissioner Felber, appreciate your comments. I will tell you there's individuals that have the same sentiment throughout the community, but because of the federal requirements, we do have to carry forward a couple of these options.
And we're in the study phase of this, just for general knowledge, how far out? A decade, 2 decades before a bridge even built? None of us will be on this board.
I would
plan
say
to live a
best
long
case
time.
scenario, yeah, best case scenario with everything going completely smoothly, you're looking at least a decade.
Okay.
Again, I always like to remind people the bridge between Minnesota and Wisconsin over the St.
54
Croix
years.
River took 75 years. So we're dealing with the Mississippi, which is actually a higher class of river than the St. Croix is.
And I always like to say that you have to stick with the processes, you have to stick with how it lays out, never with the thought that you're gonna actually be the one that could be using that bridge. But if you don't stay with it, like we walked away from it 25, 30 years ago, and didn't stick with it, that put us this much farther behind. And I have no expectations that I'm gonna be on any bridge deck cutting a ribbon. I mean, it would be nice, but you stick with the process because it's what needs to happen for the future.
And Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Hulse.
And Andrew, just correct me if I say anything incorrect, but just for the general public, the reason that you have to have all of these options in the study this early is because what the process doesn't, what the federal requirements don't want to have is that the study limits the options so that you're kind of steering it toward a specific outcome.
Correct.
Right? It's designed to make sure that you're evaluating all possible outcomes in an unbiased manner so that you don't game the system.
Yep.
That's the reason that it's set up the way it is.
Correct.
Yeah, and one of the things this process also requires you to do is find alternative things that help alleviate any traffic issues. One of the things that it did identify and we are pursuing is creating an interchange at County Road 11 and Highway 10. And that was something that was identified that would help with this process, and the state and federal requires you to do those things as well.
Questions answered?
Well, it was really not so much questions. I mean, I understand the process. I've actually done parts of these processes. I've been part of the NEPA evaluation. I don't want somebody, 3 years from now saying, hey, you voted for that the first time. No, I didn't.
Okay.
I just want to make it clear.
So we have pulled number 17. We need a motion to accept number 17.
I'll make a motion to accept number 17 as presented.
Moved by Commissioner Danielowski,
I'll second it.
seconded by Commissioner Felber. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on. That took a while. Announcements, Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Given we have some outside presenters, if the board's okay with that, I would just defer my announcements to make them part of number 7, so we can move on with items 1, 2, and 3 in particular.
You just want to be with us.
I always want to be with you
Okay,
guys.
appreciate that.
So
Okay, then we'll move on to number 1 of the regular agenda. Consider Resolution 041525 AD 3205 for the appointment of the Sherburne County Attorney. Bruce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I will defer to the two commissioners who were on the interview panel for specific comments. I would just note that reluctantly with Ms. Haney's retirement, we did entertain a process approved by the board. We advertised and solicited interested applications. We had 4 absolutely outstanding finalists that were interviewed. 2 finalists were subsequently met for an informal discussion as a follow-up. Based upon the process, there is a consensus recommendation to bring to the county board, a recommendation for the appointment of Ms. Dawn Nyhus to serve as the Sherburne County Attorney. With that, I will defer to the commissioners if they would like to make any comments.
I would just initially like to motion to approve the resolution 041525-AD3205 for the appointment of Ms. Dawn Nyhus as Sherburne County Attorney.
We have a motion.
A second.
Second by Commissioner Danielowski. Any further discussion?
To say this was, I mean, there was a lot of debate, a lot of work was put into this selection, and this is what the, everyone who was involved in the process, this was the decision that was made, and I think it's a fantastic decision.
Yep. This is an example of where the cream rises to the top. I think our 4 candidates, I think, were tremendous. It was challenging to say the least, but I mean, in the end, I think the appointment and selection of Dawn is the right one, and I think that moving forward for the county board is the way to go.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Holz.
I did not speak with either of the commissioners that were in the interview process. However, I did speak with Commissioner Administrator Messel.
Commissioner wannabe,
Not the
right?
one- I'm not the
Administrator
one
Messel.
at this time.
But I just wanted to say that he informed me that the quality of the candidates were outstanding,
Yep.
and I think this selection is excellent. So it's an outstanding appointment, and it speaks to your strengths that you were selected over some very high quality candidates.
We're replacing you, Kathy.
Good job.
It's great to have your blessing. We have a motion and a second for the appointment of Dawn. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Mr. Chair, just real quick, a couple notes for moving forward, and then I hope that we can acknowledge and congratulate Dawn. She will be initiating work on May 1st, immediately following the departure of Ms. Haney, after we celebrate wildly into the night on the 30th, however. So. And then I would note, however, that we will have a official public swearing in on the 6th of May at your board meeting. And one of the judges will be coming down to do that. So if I may say, and be so bold as to say, all of the staff are very excited to work with Dawn, and we're also now invested in the success of the attorney's office during this transition, because Dawn's success is our success, and we will really look forward to working with her. So I hope that the board will be willing to congratulate her now with a round of applause. And Dawn has prepared a 4-hour speech.
Not billable hours.
Non-billable hours, yes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Number 2, receive an update regarding the Northland Reliability Project. Brian?
Good morning. My name is Brian Hunker, and I work for Great River Energy. I know I've presented on our Northland Reliability Project in the past, so I'll provide just a quick update and then let you guys know where we're at right now and where we plan to go here in the future. So the Northland Reliability Project, if you could go to the next slide, please. So the Northland Reliability Project, as a recap, is a new high-voltage transmission line that extends from Iron Range down to the Big Oaks substation. And it's a new double-circuit 345 kV line. It's going to be 90% co-located with existing high-voltage transmission lines. So when we say co-located, that's either built next to existing transmission lines or Current transmission lines will be removed, and that new transmission line will be built on those easements. And the Iron Range substation and Benton County substations will be expanded. We're going to build a new series compensation station in Crow Wing County near Riverton. And then Xcel Energy is building the Big Oaks substation that is just on the east side of the Sherco plant. The project came to be through a series of studies conducted by MISO, and MISO is the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, and they're our grid operator for the Upper Midwest. And so there's a whole series of projects that are being conducted under their Tranche 1 series of projects, and there also is cost-sharing allocation amongst all of the utilities from Minnesota over to Michigan, down into Iowa and Illinois for all these projects. So the big news for us is that the Public Utilities Commission approved our route on February 28th of this year. So again, they increased the amount that we are rebuilding on existing transmission. Most of that has happened in that Riverton area, that Cuyuna area. So they have done that by consolidating some existing transmission lines and having our, when I say consolidating transmission lines, that means taking two existing transmission lines, putting them on top of one another, which leaves an open right-of-way for the NRP project. So this reduces the amount of new right-of-way that is out there. We do have some route expansions in the Swatera area, and that's primarily to avoid some residents and to continue to work with those landowners. Where we cross the Mississippi River, it's up in Itasca County and then down in Crow Wing County. We are crossing those on existing rights-of-way, and that's due to some concerns from MnDOT with the scenic byways that are adjacent to the river. And then we also heard from many public comments to utilize tax forfeit lands. This again is primarily in the northern reaches of our project. So we have worked with the counties up there and tried to utilize those lands as much as we can. Down here in Sherburne County, our route hasn't changed. Please recall that we have two current transmission lines. One is GRE's, what's called the GRE-BS line, and that's the metal monopole structures that are out there. The second line is our MR line, and that is the wooden H-frame structures that are out there. Both of those will be removed and then replaced with the steel monopoles in a double circuit configuration. So one extends from the Big Oak substation up to the Benton County sub, and the other extends from the Sherco substation up to the Benton County substation. We do have some slight route changes here, and the two that are shown on the left-hand slide are our MR line, and those structures are within existing water bodies or lakes. We are removing those structures from the lakes and putting them adjacent to those lakes in the upland areas. And then the third one, which is shown on the right, is it's kind of sandwiched in between the fly ash landfill and the Sherco solar facility, and we worked with Xcel Energy in this area for the transmission line routing, and then it also helps us out with routing into the Big Oaks substation, which is shown by that yellow dot. As we continue here throughout 2025 and into 27, we're going to continue to work on our engineering design of the transmission line, continue to work on the local, state, federal permitting associated with this project. Going to work with our local entities on road use agreements, road crossings, driveway type permitting. And this is all to support material delivery that'll happen in August or September of this year down here in Sherburne County. After that, we plan to start access matting. So matting is either composite matting or wood timber mats that will be laid down for access purposes. So we'll start that in September with a foundation start right around September 29th or August 1st of this year. We plan to, I'll jump into the next slide. And then we're going to continue working with your Parks and Recreation Department on the two county park crossings. So we have 3 phases of construction. We're essentially going to construct south to north. So we're going to go from, I'll just say Sherco Big Oaks up to Benton as phase 1. We plan to start at Sherco and kind of work in a figure 8 configuration. So we'll start at Sherco, work up towards Benton County, and then back south to Big Oaks. Phase 2 of construction is going to be the middle segment shown in yellow, so that would be Benton up to Cuyuna. And then phase 3 is going to be Cuyuna to Iron Range. Each of those are roughly 2-year construction segments starting in 2025, and ending in 2030. So our general construction steps are that we will clear trees, we'll stake the right-of-way, and any additional work areas that we may need, like a pole and tension site. We do soil borings. We like to do soil borings at each of our structure locations to get that soil profile. That helps with our foundation design. And our foundation design is shown in that bottom right-hand corner where it's a concrete pier with an anchor bolt cage that is sunk into that concrete, and then the steel structure is bolted to that anchor bolt cage. So after the foundation is installed, then we set the structure using a crane typically on top of that concrete helical pile. And then we'll hang our dollies and our insulators and then conduct the wire stringing. And then if there's any restoration or cleanup activities, that will follow. Coming in this year, we do have a few areas where we need to conduct some surveys, and those surveys could be environmental surveys for rare plants, wetland delineations, cultural resources. We do need to finish conducting soil borings, and again, start with our land surveys as well. So the land surveys are all staking the right-of-way, structure locations, work areas, etc. Our real estate process is underway. We have presented options to landowners, and we have staked structure locations. We're reviewing those with landowners, and then presenting the easement documents as well. A couple of considerations that folks may see in this area as we begin construction is, of course, the construction staking. They'll see sediment and erosion control BMPs like a silt fence or a straw wattle. There might be some noise and lights associated with construction, and of course, equipment materials moving along county roads and into some of our laydown areas and our work sites. If we have to span across a road, we don't like to have road closures, but if that's needed, then we'll work with the appropriate entities to make that happen. Our typical working hours are going to be 6 days a week, so that's Monday through Saturday, roughly 12 hours a day from about 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then, of course, they may see, not down here as much, maybe in a couple new reroute areas, we will have some slight tree clearing that's associated with or on our easement area. So we continue to connect with people through our hotline, our website. We have land agents out in the field. We're going to continue to present to county boards here. And then we also are going to start mailing out a quarterly newsletter associated with our project. And this is our website and our email address and our hotline. Are there any questions?
Questions, comments?
Thank you very much for the update.
Yeah, one thing I'll just say is I've since you guys have been here, I think this is your 3rd or 4th time you've been here, Brian.
Correct.
I'm still it goes right through the middle of my district, and my concern always has been the agricultural land and the center pivot irrigators that are going. These guys have had these pivots up for decades, going around the existing power poles that are there, and now they're going to have those pivots be affected by new poles. And my consideration is that you hopefully work with all those landowners to situate the new monopoles where they'll be the most conducive and not cost these agricultural producers too much revenue in regards to moving or allocating new resources to get those pivots to make full circles.
Sure, yeah, that is a concern and a comment that we are working through with some of the landowners that are out here.
Okay, appreciate that, thank you.
Sure.
Any other comments? Thank you. Moving on to number 3, St. Cloud Regional Airport Authority update and discussion. Bill and Brian. And Angie. And you guys could give yourself a brief introduction of who you are and where you're from.
Okay, I'm Brian Myers, a Sherburne County resident and one of the appointees to the St. Cloud Regional Air Authority Board. Just a brief comment. Congratulations on your retirement. I hope you don't flunk it like I have. Be very busy. And then also want to thank the Sherburne County Board and Bruce and Dan for all their support over the years of our work at the airport. It's just been great. So I'll turn it over to Angie.
Good morning. Thank you for having us here this morning. I'm Angie Olson. I am the at-large member on the airport board, but I am a Sherburne County resident in Gary's district, so we appreciate you having us here. We can share about the airport. Can I also extend an invitation for all of you guys to come to our meeting whenever you want, or an airport tour? Of course. We're a little biased, but we love the airport and would love to have you guys visit.
Thank you, and I'm Bill Towell, the airport director.
Welcome.
And Jamie Bestian was unable to be here. She's on the faculty at St. Cloud State and had a class she had to teach today. So she sends her regrets because she's the other Sherburne County rep on the board. Just to get started, as you probably know, we had some communication issues last fall when there was talk of a levy, and I want to fall on my sword there and apologize for any miscommunication that resulted from that before we get into this presentation. But just wanted to start off with that, and then we'll get into the presentation. Oh, there we go. So today, I want to talk about the impact that the airport has on the region, the benefits of the airport authority designation, strategic initiatives, revenue generating initiatives, budget challenges, financial overview, and next steps. So that's what we're going to cover today. Feel free to ask questions if you want to ask them during the presentation or when I'm done. That's great. So first off, impact. The airport was started in this location in 1970. In 2024, 43,350 operations, so that's takeoffs and landings. So that averages 118 per day. So, I mean, there is a lot of activity there. We also have Allegiant, Sun Country, the military, medical, and private aviation all taking place at the airport. There's 104 based aircraft there, and including 12 National Guard helicopters. So we've got the Chinooks and the Blackhawks that operate out of the St. Cloud Airport. In 2024, we had 44,000 airline passengers, which was a 19% increase over a year ago. Those are primarily, well, that'd be flying on Allegiant and on the Sun Country private charters. The airport supports 395 local jobs, plus 80 more at the Army National Guard Support Facility. One of the things that facility is designed to be doubled in size. If we ever get equipped down in the state with the helicopters, it's likely we'd have a good shot at the rest of the fleet at Holman Field in St. Paul, and that would obviously double the number of National Guard employees at the facility. That hasn't been discussed yet, but we're ready when that time comes. So based on the study that was done initially, there's a $50 million annual economic impact of the airport. And the business community was a primary driver of the forming the airport authority, and with the idea that it would improve infrastructure and services, help create a solid foundation to support economic growth in the region and help all three counties grow. One of the things prior to forming the airport authority, and that's one of the reasons why you'll see when we look at the financials, limited resources of the city were inhibiting the pace of progress. The county and cities negotiated formation of the authority. The three county administrators and the city administrator worked together to come up with what the agreement looks like. And there was an independent board that was formed. There's 2 representatives from each county, 2 representatives from the city until their financial obligations go away after 10 years, and then 1 at-large member, which is Angie. Our purpose then is to govern and manage to maximize the airport potential as a regional asset. So that's why we exist. And so benefits of becoming an authority, and we'll get into this when you see the things that we've accomplished since we started, but definitely an uptick in necessary improvements made to the airport. And we're obviously authorized to execute agreements, acquire property, and operate the airport with taxing authority. That's the way it was set up. The city's commitment that's in that agreement is that they would provide $620,000 for operations for 10 years beginning on January 1st, 2022. And then also the local ops and sales tax provides $200,000 for capital from 2018 to 2038. One of the things you'll see when we get further into the presentation is, unfortunately, these items are not inflation adjusted, as are a lot of the other revenues that we have coming from the FAA. And so when you get to that part of the presentation, you can see the devastating effects of that when we had inflation. When this agreement was drafted, there wasn't much inflation. We've had plenty since. So since becoming an airport authority, and one of the things I think we're most proud of is St. Cloud Technical and Community College is going to be having an AMT school. This will produce high-paying, blue-collar jobs in aircraft maintenance, and so the first class will start in September of 2026. They already have their first 2 airplanes acquired, and so eventually that facility will sit on the airport campus, not on the college campus. And so that process is well underway, and we've had great support from Delta, Sun Country, and Cirrus in that regard. And the governor and state legislature and the federal legislature. So the other thing is we built a new T-hangar. Many of you were there for the grand opening of that, and then also taxiway development. That totaled $4.5 million. We also the airport ILS and approach lighting system is from the 80s. I mean, the staff has done a great job of maintaining it with duct tape and baler twine, but it's time it needs to be replaced. And the state was demanding, they said, we have to get it replaced. And luckily, we went to the legislature last year and we got a total funding between Minnesota Bonding, the FAA, and MnDOT Aeronautics for $6 million to upgrade that navionics and lighting approach system at the airport. Also, and a number of you were at the press conference where we had the 2 senators here, we received $500,000 to update the air traffic control tower radio system, very much needed. And then the grading and drainage project, that's $900,000. Now, the last one, the solar study, we've been trying to figure out, is there a way to reduce our electrical use? Unfortunately, with kind of what's going on in Washington, probably the grant funding that we'd need to make that happen is probably not going to be available. But we've done the study, and if we can get it funded, it obviously would be a big savings to the airport. So since the forming of the airport authority, we've had a number of new revenue generating initiatives. The big one is parking, and one of the things you got to remember is this revenue is typically coming from outside the region. A lot of people are flying in from, or flying out, are from as far away as Rochester, Fargo, the Iron Range, et cetera. So local people typically are getting a ride to the airport, but before we did this, there were people that were parking there for 2 months at a time while they go to Arizona. It's crazy. So we're generating new revenue there, and then also the T-hangar rents hadn't been raised, I think it was 7 or 8 years, so we've upped the rents on the T-hangars, so you can see additional revenue that's been generated there. And then there's a new hangar development area, and so we have one new private hangar. Blattner is actually building that right now, and that'll generate another $50,000 of revenue. And then there's another new private hangar being built, and that's another $45,000 of new revenue annually. And then when that whole area that's fully built out, that will be an additional $200,000 annually to our budget based on that development. So now to the challenges. We operate a 24/7 facility with 8 employees, and they are a dedicated crew. The board has been absolutely impressed with Bill and his staff and the work that they do. And so that's been great. One of the challenges we had is in transitioning from a city to an airport authority, it did eliminate our ability to utilize city resources. So the cost of finance, legal, payroll, HR, et cetera, is about $175,000 of additional expense by being a airport authority versus being part of the city. So I don't know that anybody anticipated that, but that is a reality when you separate. And we are a municipality, basically, so we have to operate with general counsel, et cetera, and all that comes at a cost. The other thing is the airport needs to maintain $2 million in reserves to cash flow projects, especially when we get these grant funding. We have to spend the money and then get the grants, so that's obviously very important for our fiscal responsibility. On to the operating budget challenges. Here you can see we have $2 million in the bank, but you know, as we look at city operating fund revenues are fixed. That 620 is fixed, so obviously over time, when we get to the end of this, that $620 is only worth $453,000 based on the inflation that we have. So big loss of purchasing power of that revenue. So if the agreement would have been written with inflation escalators in it, we'd be in a different spot, but that's not the way the agreement is devised. On the capital side, we get $200,000 from the sales tax funding and $1 million a year from the FAA. So that's been fixed since 2000. So if you think about it, based on inflation, that's today only worth $550,000, not $1 million, as it was back in 2000. And the $200,000 of local option sales tax money by 2038 will only be worth $116,000. So you can see what happens with inflation when you have fixed revenues. Back actually 24 years ago, when Obertstar was chair of the Transportation Committee, he was really kind to the St. Cloud Airport. And so all the big plowing equipment, a lot of infrastructure was paid for back then. Well, unfortunately, the city didn't maintain replacement reserves on equipment. And of course, now that stuff's all over 20 years old. And again, the crew does a great job keeping it alive, but these are expensive pieces of equipment. Obviously, safety is paramount. When Allegiant flight leaves from Mesa headed to St. Cloud, Bill has to certify that that runway is going to be clear of any snow, ice, et cetera, so you can't not plow the runways. And so the regulatory requirements plus the airline requirements obviously require us to keep everything running. Here you can see the operating budgets and what's the situation we've got with deficit spending. We're basically okay in the early years, but we had COVID money that was helping deal with some of the budget issues in the beginning, but obviously over time that runs out. And so there you can see our budget projection for 2025 and why we're requesting a levy, which we backed off on for 25, but you can see why we did that. Now, what impact has this airport authority had over the past 6 years? Well, here you can see the dark blue lines represent FAA funding. The orange is the state, and then the local funding is the thin green line. And so you can see here, in this time, we brought in $13,260,000 from the feds, $332,000 from the state, and locally we provided $332,000. So that's on the capital side. So I think we've been doing our best to build the capacity, drum up every form of revenue we can, and and do the right thing to turn this into the regional asset that we think the three boards in the city envisioned when this was formed. So next step, obviously, we're communicating with our stakeholders. This fall, we would be proposing a tax levy. As an example, last year when we were thinking about this, it would have been $415 for operating and $585 for capital. The impact on the average home in the three counties would be $6.30 annually, a little over 50 cents a month. So that's kind of where we are today. So questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Schumacher.
2 months of free parking is a minimal statement. It was more like 5 months of free parking before
Well, I
you.
was trying to be kind.
My parents are in Yuma, in Arizona, with a lot of friends up in Mesa. And if you're in District 5 here, the 5-star district of Sherburne County, you're 5 stars.
I'm not in that one, but I've heard
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
Keep telling yourself that.
yep. We also had the Princeton Airport. I was the mayor of Princeton, and so we went through that same thing, getting a new runway put in. And MSP last night was a disaster because they shut the main runway down in order to do the reconstruction. And so I'm telling you guys, last night it was a zoo coming back into MSP because of what's going on. So hopefully that'll transfer some of that traffic to be just not to deal with that down there under their reconstruction of the runway. I am also a part of after leaving the Princeton position of the land of the rich and famous for the Princeton Airport, which is always classified. I did get 20 hours of Cirrus flight training, and I did a lot of touch and goes. I just touch and go around again. So I'm very adversed into your guys' business and industry, and I actually do enjoy it. Growing up in Princeton, I didn't realize the asset of the airport. It's looked at in a different way because we share the equipment. The equipment is shared for public works. And so that would be a massive transition to be able to afford the equipment and then rebuild it and maintain it from the private sector. Because not per se for this, but in the city, you have to plow the runway before you plow the city streets. And so it's definitely a conversation point that changed. But no, I do appreciate what you guys do over there. I did come over for the largest party I've ever seen in my life at the St. Cloud Airport this last summer when President Trump flew his plane in and landed. I was in the ditches along that whole area. I'd never seen so many people have such a great time at a party at an airport. But I was happy to be there with my neighbors and friends and celebrate on the side of the road when the motorcade came through there. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you for the presentation. I know I was on the board when we were working through this whole process, and it was very evident that the three counties wanted to come together because the airport was not going to grow if it stayed just strictly with St. Cloud. And the regional aspect that this airport presents for our area was really hugely important and significant. So it was a lot of work to work through the process, and I know that we did not give the ability to levy lightly. It was a lot of conversations around that. It was also put out that there needed to be a lot of communication between the airport authority and the counties as well, and at the moment, including St. Cloud, because until the 10-year commitment expires, they are a stakeholder as well before they then will transition into being a part of the Stearns County representation. So I do want to say that this probably would have been helpful to have this information to where you say, $6.30 annual on the property tax statement. And I am familiar with how some of these work. Being from Big Lake, there was the Monticello Big Lake Hospital Authority levy that was in place for many years when the local area came together to build a hospital in their area. And it was a little bit different through that process because you actually got elected to the hospital board to represent your area, and they did have levying authority as well. So every year you've seen on your tax statement It could go anywhere from $15 to $45, depending on what they were doing to grow the hospital for the community. So I think a good lesson learned going forward, we cannot drop that communication piece, because as we can see through what you've shown us and what Commissioner Schumacher has referenced to, a lot of the stuff that you inherited was aged, needed to be replaced. It's obviously at a lot of its life end. And in order to have a safe regional airport that does get used, there is dollars involved in keeping it thriving and growing.
Commissioner Holz.
Mr. Chair, so what is the levy process for this?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I'll take a initial crack and then Kathy can fill me in. Under Minnesota statute, when an airport authority is created, it does have levy authority. They have to pass the formal legal documents, resolutions at their level. They then bring it to the auditors of the 3 counties, and then ultimately, and I'll clarify this, I think the city becomes part of the taxing authority after the 10 years, is that right?
Well, what happens is after the 10 years, the residents of the city that are in the 3 respective counties then would
Pay the county tax, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
right.
so the request is they have to create a fiscal agent. Basically, one of the 3 counties has to serve, one of the auditors has to serve as essentially like a lead fiscal agency. And then at that point, it is authorized to go on to the tax statement in the 3 counties. So they do have statutory authority to set a levy. They have to go through a process to get there, but it does not include a referendum, and it does not include voting by the 4 joint powers bodies.
And then is the levy applied across all 3 counties? Is that that's the tax?
That's correct.
And then is it its own line item, such as the school board?
Correct.
On the tax statement?
Correct.
Okay,
And they're under in hospital, as Rhiannon mentioned, hospitals boards are different under the statute. They're elected. Solon conservation districts have been asking for levy authority. They're elected, but there are appointed bodies, and airport authorities are one of those. Just the way they're structured and the costs and everything, that the authority has the levy authority. So you appoint people to their board with levy authority. So the hold on them from the people is through you and your appointment process.
Yeah, but that's just what I was going to comment on, that we are the ones that approve who sits on this board to represent us. And so that is a way to also have that, if you want to call it oversight.
Yep. And their terms are staggered, as you can imagine. They're not in perpetuity. So just to give you a really off-the-wall example, but since Brad went south, I'll go south too. In Tucson, the airport authority was structured identically to this. But when the city council appoints somebody to the Tucson Airport Authority, it's in perpetuity. And then there's like no recall, and the relationship's different. Here, especially because we're so early in the joint powers process, I think we have an opportunity to solidify the relationship with the 3 counties. But basically, the 3 counties at the time said, we don't want to run an airport, so we created an authority to run it. So it's like a joint powers board, basically.
Mr. Chair, but we don't have the authority to block a levy, right, as the counties?
Yeah, it does. The statute does not allow for that.
Okay,
So,
that's what I thought.
what we could do is work with the authority board to put in place additional checks and balances, for instance. And I think that's the inflation discussion is one that, to be honest, we probably all missed. I recall vaguely that there were some limitations on the city, that the referendums that were passed had revenue limitations. But I think in good faith, it's worth this conversation on the finances, even for the next 5 years, has to be had, and we have to come up with something. My 2 cents is that, it's probably incumbent upon the 4 joint powers entities, current entities, so the city and the 3 counties, to sit down with the authority, look at their budget, decide what the next 5 years brings until St. Cloud transitions off, and come up with a strategy. And maybe that includes the city allowing some of that tax on the city residents in lieu of the lack of inflationary increase. I think there's some creativity there.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. you know, fundamentally, we have to follow statute, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we have to follow statute.
The attorney would probably recommend that. You know.
She's only an attorney today.
Yeah, it's her
Come
last
on.
meeting.
Live a little. You know,
We do have bed space in our jail, just so you know.
Absolutely. And I fundamentally have a visceral dislike of non-elected boards having taxing authority. We have to follow statute. It is what it is. But it does point out the importance of taking the appointment process very seriously and making sure that we're appointing, and I'm sure we are, and we sure have in the past. But we just have to continue to make sure that process is robust. And so as people come up and are and we're looking to replace people on the board as they retire or what have you, or step down, we just need to make sure that we're taking that particular process very seriously.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just add this too. The Minnesota statutes are reflective of 170 years of history and learning. So for instance, just weird things come up, like jails are exempt from voter referendum and voter reverse referendum. Why? Jails aren't popular, but they're a necessary function. So when you guys make a decision to build a jail, the legislature specifically carved out that, I'll call it direct intervention with the voters, because it's just it's resulted in chaos over 100 years because people don't want to vote for jails. Airport authorities are kind of similar to that. They're kind of, I'll call it almost a hidden function. It's highly valuable, highly necessary, but it doesn't fall into that normal, hey, do we want to buy and build a new park? Let's do a referendum. And so there's some logic to those carve-outs, but they're not unique to airport authorities either. So,
And Mr. Chair, like I said, I think this is a really good example of why we need to have this communication consistently, get these presentations, get a better understanding, and not let that ball drop again, to avoid situations like this. Because I agree, this group did not give this authority easily. And they put those processes like in place that we would have the authority to appoint who is there to represent us as each other county did. But it is also, we also knew that if we didn't do something of this nature, we would be in the same boat the St. Cloud stayed in. How are you ever going to, between the three counties, move anything when it's needed? So we just need to stay on top of it, to Commissioner Hull's point, at all times.
So, Mr. Chair, could I respond? One of the things, just I think in retrospect, was, you know, we were following the law, the statute, and I think, you know, we had our counsel saying, well, you can do this, here's how you do it. And I think, you know, the piece that was missed was the better communication piece with the three counties. So again, I apologize for that. I think the board, you know, again, your legal counsel is telling you, okay, here's the process, but we should have given it a bit more thought in terms of, okay, that communication piece. Annually, we've been reporting back to the counties, and of course, part of the issue is it takes a while as we're new at this. We've never done this before. So when you are looking at this and like day one, we didn't know the equipment was all the age it was. I mean, these are things you find out as you do your work and learn about what you're dealing with finance. So that was all part of the process. I think now, boy, it's dialed in. We know exactly where everything is at on all fronts. Plus the 175 annually coming from not being part of the city. No one anticipated that either. So that's kind of where we're at.
Mr. Chair, one other question.
Commissioner Halls.
Are there notification requirements if the airport authority does decide that they're going to, or when they decide to issue a levy, are there public notification requirements, or is there truth in taxation requirements?
There's a notification requirement in statute. I'll dig it out to give it to you, and they followed it. But one of the challenges is, and with all due respect to Brian and Bill and Jamie, and the rest of the board, sorry, I didn't mean to throw you, drop you. They, in hindsight, they screwed up. And I think we need to own it as part of the Joint Powers Board as well. There was an email, for instance, that was sent out. It was well-intended, but they were trying to align their communication policy. Well, it's read by some of your colleagues as you can't talk to your appointed people, you can only talk to Brian or Bill. Well, come on. You just said how important the appointment process is. So I think there's really work that needs to be done before the summer if the board's going to ask for a levy. So not just follow the statute, do more. So there's been some conversations that have been initiated, and one of the asks for you today is for 2 commissioners to sit down as a joint powers entity, because there's not regular meetings, and talk about some things to improve that. So for instance, even if it's not in statute, the board could adopt policies and procedures that says when we do a levy increase, we will do public hearings in each of the 3 or 4 districts, 4 for now. We will do X, Y, and Z. So even, I don't think we should rely, this is my just personal opinion, I'm just going to be on a soapbox here. There's statutory requirements, and then there's good process. We screwed up the process, and I say we, I'm saying collectively, because we appointed them, they did their best job, but we missed the mark. And so some of the conversation has been, maybe we have an ex officio commissioner and city council member be a part of their meetings. Their meetings are public, they're posted, you guys can go, but if you don't have that attention to detail, it gets lost. Everything's going great. That's exactly what we wanted. We wanted it to be run as an independent business and don't bother us. And that, for most of what's happened over the last, 4 or 5 years, that's exactly what's happened. But there are cases when the touch tone points are important, and this is one of them. So yeah, I think there can be more done, and good ideas, like we've talked briefly about, maybe in good faith, the airport authority adopts a levy limit and says, hey, we didn't expect to levy the first 10 years. We now find this operating deficit. If there's consensus among the joint powers entities and you guys are willing to support it, then maybe they do $1 million levy, but they say that's a maximum amount we will levy for the next 10 years. So, I mean, I think that's my thought, is there's work that needs to be done here. And if the commissioners want to be involved, the first step would be sit down with the other joint powers and have a conversation.
I guess to follow up on that just a little bit, from a legal standpoint, so, you know, you've mentioned that moving away from being supported by the city, you have to have your own legal counsel, you know, all of those things. One of the things that that brings to mind is, for example, the other joint powers that we're on. So, for example, the watershed district. One of the things that we have is one of the county's attorney offices acts as, what's the term?
Legal counsel.
Thank you.
I'm happy to fill in the blank.
Yeah, thank you. Serves as legal counsel, but from the perspective of a government entity and what those requirements are. I don't know whether this is necessary or not, but would it make sense within the joint powers agreement? You have your attorney that's focused on airport operations. Maybe they may or may not be versed on statutory requirements for taxation, and maybe it would be helpful to have the joint powers counties agree on one of the offices to help support from that perspective, so that things like we're talking about get addressed correctly. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's as a suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, I think anything is possible and maybe should be looked at. The current joint powers agreement is a formation agreement. It forms the authority. There's not a board of the joint powers that meets regularly. And so then we default to the authority. Could you reconstitute the authority in a different form or fashion? Yes. Could you do things short of that, like say, yeah, let's have ex officio members? That's a decision that you and the board make without having to redo the joint powers authority. Yeah, you know, there's also the standard things. If the joint powers falls apart, everything reverts back to the city. If one county chooses to leave, they can do that, but if 2 leave, it's gone. So it's kind of a handoff joint powers authority, but I think there's room to reengage. And offering services like that makes sense. Some of these things, because we don't meet, Bill does a good job of just talking to the 4 administrators. I didn't realize how much the I'll call it tussle with the city is about, you know, here's the city's perspective. You want to get more planes in here, that's great, it's more revenue, but we have to provide police services and fire services, it's more work for us, so we don't want to pay for it. You know, so you've got those operational things because you're extricating from one entity, creating a new entity. So shortcomings, bond counsel, legal counsel, yeah, I think it'd be great to have that conversation because maybe the entities can help short of just writing a check. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, when you look at all the statutes that are involved, I mean, there's very specific. And although I would have preferred, when the statute was written, that this was an elected board, because I just feel those are more responsive, that is clearly, you read a lot in appellate opinions, that was clearly not the intent of the legislature, and has remained that way since 2009. So that's where we are. So, but I do believe that by maintaining good lines of communication, we can ensure that the public trust and that the public benefit is well maintained here. And I think that that's what we've all discussed here this morning, and I think that's going to be, that's how we do this.
Mr. Chairman, just one last, I just want to also give you guys credit because you guys did heavy lifting. When you raise the revenue on the hangars, you work with what you have and you raise the revenue, and then you also get people coming to build new hangars. You've done your part, and to make sure you guys get credit for the hard work that you guys did on that, because it's super hard to raise the rate on hangars. And I can tell you from personal experience back in my last role, it's hard. And so you guys, there's credit there given. I mean, amongst all the other conversations, there's credit for what the board is doing and their ability to be able to do that in a way that's responsible enough to still get other people to come and build new hangars in that facility. So I just want to make sure there's positive note left moving on that portion.
And Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Danielowski.
one last comment, and I am really looking forward to the day that hopefully Delta or one of the other major carriers comes back, because I would much rather drive up to the St. Cloud Airport than drive down to the Twin Cities to
It's a
that
mess.
big monstrosity down there.
And, you know, the other thing I note is we're very fortunate because Sherburne County actually has 3 of the members of the board. So, you know, in addition to Angela and Jamie, you know, Brian, like you said, lives in the county as well. The board, I think it's incumbent upon this board because the ask after the presentation is, Benton and Stearns have requested a meeting of the joint powers entity. But I think the other message that this board can send is, yeah, let's re-engage, at least at the staff level for now, with commissioners, you know, in ex officio, ad hoc roles as appropriate, and let's make sure that we're doing our part to fix what went wrong last year.
Yeah, and I think that it's important to have the city of St. Cloud involved, as they are still somewhat recognized as a separate entity, at least until the 10 years expires. I would hate to exclude them. They're still somewhat a partner at the moment.
Yeah, and when the board's ready, I'd suggest we transition to that. I know the chair's been engaged, and I'll defer to Gary to talk about next steps, but, and I didn't mean to push you guys forward. I apologize if you had more questions for Brian and Angie. And
I don't have any questions. It's just mainly a comment. You know, you look at the economic impact of it, the airport, $50 million a year for the region, and the $300,000 home, $6.30 annually. That's one Starbucks. I mean, we subsidize all kinds of transportation. I don't think this is out of line. I think our lack of communication was maybe what we need to do. I've spoken to both the Benton County Chair and the Stearns County Chair. I think we need to sit down with all 4 powers and speak about what you mentioned, Andrew, and other things that have came up. I think we need to do that. I have no doubt that the Sherburne County Board does not want to run an airport, and I think the individuals that we have at the Airport Authority are incredible. I've gone to their meetings. I think what they're doing out there is a phenomenal job, and the little bit we need to do to help them out through this process, we need to just set some of the parameters I think Bruce has mentioned, to sit down with the other counties and the city, I think, and move forward and get this, you know, changes. This is a learning process for all of them. Brian's mentioned that. This is new to them. It's new to us. I think, you know, we're not going to be sitting here and the airport's going to be still there. There's going to be changes people will make 10 years from now to make this thing better. And that's what we have to do, because the airport, I think, is vitally important to the region. And it sits right in the middle of my district. So.
Mr. Chair, I'd be willing to serve in that role capacity as
I
well.
think that would be prudent simply because you bring historical background.
Well,
Yeah.
besides-
Yeah, and it sits in my district, so I would sit on that also.
Can I suggest if you do that to make Brad an alternate since he's got experience from the
With the
Princeton
airport,
Airport?
yes, I agree completely.
Is that okay with you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
And then do you want, I heard you mention include the city, so all four powers and the airport authority?
I think that that's.
They're there.
Okay.
Is that what you would feel?
Yeah, I mean, and just so you know, our board is excited about this conversation and the approach you're taking. So thumbs up to Sherburne County once again. But I think, yeah, it's really important that the city be part of this. And I think there's been some talk of the other two counties, of it just being the three counties. But the city's an integral part of this. They were, I mean, that's where a lot of revenue is coming from, and they are represented on the board by two people.
I'm not a legal person, but I think I've read through the agreement, and I think at any time, with a one-year notification, any member can leave. So I think that's why all four of us, the entities have to be in. The city's as vitally important to this as all three counties, I think. I think when they all need to be at the table.
Mr. Chair, may I add one thing? So one of the things that we've been desperately trying to do with the city, and now I think with the new mayor, we should be able to move forward, is the actual written agreement on what services should be, the service agreement between the city and the airport authority. And I think if that can be part of this, that would be very helpful, I think. And then if there are services that maybe other entities, one of the three counties could provide to reduce some of the expense, that would be all positive, but that can be part of that conversation.
Right, and I think this is something new. It's gonna be amended and changed as it's going. It's a fluid document, I think.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Holst.
just to, I don't want to jump too quickly on who would be part of this. To be fair, I ran the largest training squadron in the U.S. military. I've got more aviation experience than anybody on the board. I am concerned about not having someone represent that has experience with aviation operations.
All right.
So, I mean, we could have a separate discussion at some time on who that
Yeah,
would be.
no, I think it's great. I mean, and to me, especially if we do, I think the sit down with the counties will lead to, I don't want to predispose the outcome, but, you know, we've already had conversations at the staff level about ex officio members, and maybe that's something you'd be willing to do. You know, I don't know if it's important to be at I'll call it the policy level discussion, or you want to be more on the operations side, but I think that's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
And since Brad's been in the plane, you know, we could throw him in there too, so.
Yeah, and you're referring to, because I think that between Commissioner Hulls and Commissioner Schumacher, they'd be great ex officio members
Yep.
when we get to the point of putting that in place.
Airport, moving forward. I agree with you, Andrew. Yeah.
Well, and to be honest, you know, this may lead to a meeting of all four of the bodies in a large public meeting too. I mean, if there's significant issues that need to be vetted, then, you know, there is a structure for that. I mean, many years ago, we used to do that once in a while with the school board. You know, we'd have a joint meeting, or with the city council. There's benefit of doing that at certain times, especially if it is a public presentation and it's like, hey, here's our budget, here's why we want to do this. You know, then we naturally get some conversation at a full public meeting and some media coverage. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities, and, you know, I think the
No, that's fine, I just,
yeah, no, I appreciate that. I totally,
You just want to get it there.
yeah.
Yes. Well, I think then for the next move would be, Bruce, I think for you to organize a meeting with Stearns and Benton
and the city. Yep.
and the airport authority, and put us all around the table and figure this out.
I guess I do have one quick question. Have you guys done the Mea Culpa tour with the city council yet?
We have not.
Okay, that's something I would strongly recommend, especially.
We've tried to get on their calendar. I don't know, Bill, where are we at in that process?
Well, I can call Matt too, and Bill, I'm sorry, I cut you off, Bill, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's important the city council hear this as well, so, okay.
I mean, since the airport authority's been formed, we've not presented to the city because we've tried to get on the agenda and they have,
They've continued to postpone it.
Okay, so worst case is, I mean, if we invite them and they say no, then the 3 counties can say, you guys need to get back involved, so.
I think with the new mayor, that would be different today.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so if we could maybe have a motion to direct me to communicate the desires of the board as presented today, then I can do so.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Felber and a second by Commissioner Schubacher to direct Administrator Messel to discuss with the Stearns, Benton, and City and the Airport Authority to set up a joint meeting
With the two.
with 2 representatives.
Yeah, we'll start with the two indicated, and then if we do go for the ex officio, then we'll come back for formal board appointment then.
Right.
Where do we go with that?
And I think
don't.
so.
I have no experience in aircraft or flying or airports, unless you want to count that 10 feet between leaving the back of a horse and the ground, that's about it.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign? Okay. Thank you
Thank you so much.
for a great partnership. All right, we're on to number 4. Yes. Consider approval of preliminary plat, final plat of MJ Acres for Brandon Kozak, Lynn Wytachik. Good morning, Lynn.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brandon Kozak, MJ Acres, this is 1 lot. This is in Palmer Township in the Ag District. Planning Commission recommended approval with the 2 conditions listed.
I would move that we approve MJ Acres plot.
I'll second.
There's a motion by Commissioner Felber, a second by Commissioner Danielowski. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Next item is Jennifer and Brian Ham. They're requesting a conditional use permit to use alternative elevation methods for a residential structure. This is on the Briggs Lake chain, 11414 49th Street Southeast in Clear Lake in Palmer Township. Planning Commission recommended approval with the 5 conditions and the findings of fact.
I would motion that we approve this one also.
Moved by Commissioner Felber,
Second.
second by Commissioner Schubacher. Any further discussion?
One little more of a statement. This is a great idea. I mean, this is really nice. This is a really good way to let people keep the properties they have while being more cognizant of the environmental effects of the property. So this is really cool. I
Yeah,
like this.
this is
one
the
a lot.
first one I've ever seen like this around the lakes, and I think, I know this location and where they did this. I think this is just a fabulous idea by the owners, the zoning department, to come up with this idea, to let the water traverse where it's gonna go, and, I mean, it's tremendous. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, to not have to bring in all that fill is a real
Right.
positive.
Yep.
Yes.
And Mr. Chair, in regards to the fill, I have never seen a situation yet that normally does not affect the neighbor in some way that water ends up on their property.
Right.
And so I do like this as well, to eliminate that and let the water do its thing that it's been doing for how long?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Next item is SV CSG Becker LLC. Property owners are John and Lynn Golly, requesting an interim use permit for a solar farm. This is in Clear Lake Township on 41 acres in the Ag District.
Yep. I would motion that we approve this.
It has 19 conditions, sorry, and the findings of fact.
Yeah, there,
All of that.
we have a motion by
With
Commissioner
19
Felber,
Commissions and finding of fact, yes.
I'll second that.
second by Commissioner Danielowski. Any further discussion?
One quick comment on this one. I like that condition 19. Having them have to report any damages, I think it's a good idea. I would like to see that in all of them down the line. I hate to put more work on your office, but I just think that that's a pretty good idea to prevent the idea of having damaged solar arrays sitting out there.
Yep. It was Clear Lake Township's idea, and I think it was a really good idea.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to double check. I did watch the planning commission meeting on YouTube, and I'd highly recommend that for everybody. You get, the minutes are good, but you get a better flavor of the meeting. But I was curious, there was conversation in regards to that 19, and I liked the idea. I wasn't 100% clear on who's actually going to be responsible. Is that a self-report that you rely on? Or could someone call the planning and zoning office and say, hey, I seen this, can you go out and check it? Or are we going to do periodic inspections as
We
well?
do inspections annually on these solar farms to check the trees that are around them, and we send out a letter annually to the property owners if there are trees that have died and they need to replace those. But we do hear from both the township and we do hear from residents when there are issues on these, so I would imagine that's how we're gonna most likely hear about it.
Right, okay, so it will trigger something if people just call to say, hey, could you check this out? Because, you know, granted, monthly reports, it was clear that the person that was there to say our monthly reports are more geared around the production of what power is coming out of that facility and not necessarily eyes on an issue.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Where were we?
A motion.
In a second.
Second. We do. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Number 8.
MNCSG 2019-67 LLC, property owners are Katie Monk Goman and D. Monk Cobow, requesting an interim use permit for a solar farm. This is in Clear Lake Township on 18 acres in the Ag District and the orderly annexation of Zone 3 that adjoins City of Clear Lake. Planning Commission recommended approval with the 20 conditions and the findings of fact.
I will move this one with the 20 conditions and the finding of fact.
We have a motion by
Second it.
Commissioner Danielowski, second by Commissioner Felber. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Number 8.
The last one is an amendment to the Sherburne County zoning ordinance for accessory dwelling units. We've seen that in our region and in our area, there's a lot of interest in allowing potentially more than one house or structure on a property for someone to live in. And so we have been working to amend the ordinance, so you see what's before you. Planning Commission recommended approval of the amendment to the Sherburne County zoning ordinance for the accessory dwelling units.
Mr. Chair, just real quick, we've gone a little longer, and this one's going to take some discussion, I think. Is there a desire of the board to take a really brief break first, or do you want people just to get up and sneak in and out as you continue your discussion?
Let's finish this one.
Oh, God, it's a deep.
I would ask for a brief break, please.
I'd have for a brief break.
Okay, well, then,
I'm reading the eyes in the room, and it's like, but I mean, we
Be
can
okay
keep trying.
taking a 5-minute?
Sure.
All right. 10:55.
Got it. Thank you.
I mean, you could have some more sugar.
I took a carrot too.
I love carrots.
I love carrots. I think you're supposed to eat it when you're younger, though.
All right, where are we?
Carrots when you're. Yeah.
All right, number 8, Lynn? Am I
Yes,
correct?
so this is the amendment to the accessory dwelling unit for the ordinance. Planning Commission recommended approval.
I would motion that we approve this.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Brad?
Yes, I have lots of discussion. I think that there's a couple items that were missed. To be frankly honest, I think that one was relative homestead. If we're going to actually cover, as an example of helping families, right? A family qualify as a relative homestead, I think that should have been included. I get where it's just homesteaded properties as the primary, but I think there's a portion of people, and it's small. It's a very small number of relative homestead people. I did not ask the actual number that would additionally qualify, but those are people who are already helping family members. They've already got a step process, and that's why they became a relative homestead in the relative homestead credit. They have to apply every year for relative homestead credit, and that's why I think that that should have been added into this conversation.
So I'm curious, what do you mean, because here again, I watched the planning commission meeting, have their whole discussion. Commissioner Halls and I are on EDA. We have a need for housing in our county. So are you saying, because my understanding of how I'm interpreting it is that it isn't relative homestead, it has to be homesteaded.
Correct.
In order for the ADU can go on the property, but it has to be a homesteaded property. And it doesn't necessarily have to have a relative component to who is living in that ADA.
Right.
Because, or ADU, because you could have someone that if you are looking to stay in your home and you are needing maybe some assistance, you can put up an ADU, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a relative that will move into that to help take care of you.
Yes.
It could be a caregiver of some nature that would move in and help take care of you. So I don't know if I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, that it isn't a relative homestead, it just has to be homesteaded.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Yep, so, correct, but additionally, if you were a relative homestead on a different property, you already had your homesteaded property, and then you have a relative homestead property over here, this property, the second one, would also qualify to put ADU on. So you could have an ADU on your primary residence, plus your homestead of a relative homestead. These people are already doing the ADU business for their family. It gives another opportunity, taking it seriously, that these people are already moving to help their family members at a different location.
But they also, Lynn, maybe you can go into some of the discussion that was had at the Planning Commission meeting in regards to, there's also another ability that is provided through planning and zoning to have someone of that nature that is going to be taking care of a family member. I forget what you called
Well,
it.
currently, the only option we have is a mobile home. And if you have at least 5 acres and you're helping out a family member, you can move a mobile home on temporarily. But once that person is no longer living in the mobile home or in the house, then the mobile home would have to go away.
Right.
But that's currently the only other option we have, other than what's proposed here.
So
And that's a
Commissioner,
conditional, or excuse me, an interim use permit.
okay, so Commissioner Schumacher, are you wanting to say you want to add also the ability
Yes.
that it could be relative homesteaded and also put an ADU
Yes.
on it?
So if the board wanted to do that, you could add to letter C, and maintain homestead or relative homestead status. And I think that would address Brad's concerns.
Number 2. Okay, number 2, I don't disagree with 1,000 square feet of an ADU size. I think that it should possibly read 1,000 square feet or up to 1,200 if someone does a unit that would be a story and a half, or a unit that's a little bit different, like a park model. I'm making this up here, but a park model, you know, has got that little upper ceiling. And so you would incentivize people not just to make it just the same cookie cutter unit, because you want to make people proud when they come home. And so if your unit has maybe a bonus room or something different, and I'm not disagreeing with 1,000 square feet, I'm really not. I'm just saying, if it said 1,000 square feet base with up to 1,200 square feet, meaning it could be a story and a half or some other alternative, so that it would make it unique. That was number two.
Just to clarify, pardon me, just to clarify, we only count the 1,000 square feet on the main level. It could be a two-story and you have 1,000 on the main level and 1,000 upstairs. We're just looking at the actual footprint of 1,000-foot maximum.
It sounded, from the way I read it, which for clarification, it sounded like the ADU's maximum size was just 1,000 square feet.
But we measure it based on the footprint. So if you had 2 stories, we wouldn't say you could only have 500 square feet on the main level and 500 on the top. We look at it for the footprint on platted lots.
And you could also do a basement if you chose
Correct.
to. And that would not
Okay.
have that 1,000.
I can live in my barn.
I can hear that. I hear that. I just didn't read it that way. That's all I'm saying is I'm just saying I read it, and I didn't read it that it could be 1,000 lower level, 1,000 main floor, and 1,000 upper for 3,000 total. That's not how I read it. And I'm not saying that that's what would be done.
Well, to clarify, what's the specific language?
The language is detached ADUs on platted lots of 5 acres or less must be either modular or stick-built and not to exceed 1,000 square feet, and we could add on the main level.
Or footprint.
Or footprint?
Or footprint, sure.
Footprint.
Yes, that would
That
cover.
would be clarified,
item-
okay.
Yeah, that would cover item 2, because
Yep.
how I read it to what it.
And for clarification, that would not include a garage. You could have an attached garage, correct? Yeah,
Correct.
okay.
Any more? He's done.
No, I'm going to take it for, there's more. I'll take the 2 for a win, and we'll just move on.
Okay.
So then I will amend my motion to approve the, approve recommended changes to the Sherburne County ordinance regarding accessory dwellings, with amending it for the addition of relative homestead, and with the change in the definition to 1,000 square foot footprint.
Correct.
We have an amendment to the motion. We need a second.
I'll agree to that friendly amendment.
We have a second to the motion.
One other thing I forgot, I'm not gonna say one other thing anymore. I would just like to point out.
It's never going to happen.
Been
It's never
pointed
going to
out.
be one more thing.
That's going to go in
Try to redo
that's going in
that.
the book of Greg, so just, you know, it'll be a chapter for Rayanne. So.
Yeah, and I do want to say that I do appreciate planning and zoning's work on this, because I think it's going to be very helpful to our county to be able to provide the opportunity to have an accessory dwelling unit on a property, whether it be to help take care of an aging elder and or help, this was mentioned at the Planning Commission as well, help possibly keep that person on their property by being able to have some rental income as well. And so I think I applaud you guys on bringing this forward. I think it's going to be a great opportunity and help also move the needle in what Commissioner Hulls and I look at into where we are at with our housing needs in this county. So thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being open to doing those things.
Yeah, I think this has been a long, drawn-out process. I need to thank staff, too, because I think I still was the Clear Lake Township chairman when this issue first came up, and I think Mark or Mitch, you came to the town board in regards to it, if I remember right. And that was 4 years ago, probably, that we started this discussion about that. So appreciate that. So we have
And
an amendment to the motion.
Another thing, just wanted to point out to Commissioner Schumacher that it did come a long way. They originally had it as, what was that, 40% of main structure? So if your primary structure was maybe 1,000 square feet, you could only do a 40% of that structure, and that got changed as well. So,
It's been like a shed.
yeah.
I think some of us remember when they were first brought up as granny pods, remember that?
Yep,
Yep.
yeah, they were. So we have an amendment to the motion, and a friendly second to the amended motion. Any further discussion? Rayanne, shut up. So she zipped her lip. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
We are on number 9, review and accept the auditor treasurer's monthly report for March. Good morning, Lorraine.
Good morning, Commissioners. Hold on, I have a clicker. Do I have a clicker? Yes, I do. Okay. Enclosed in your packet was the March trial balance, prepared by Accounting Manager Sherburne Kapsner. Let's see if I can get this. Will this one work? Yeah. There we go. Okay.
Let me know if I might have to scroll for you, I don't know.
Okay, yep, you can scroll it up a little bit for me, thank you. It does include ARPA funds, remaining of $1,915,483.86, and the Recorder's Compliance Fund of $266,442, comparing 2025 to 2024. Additionally, I have the 3-page investment reports. Oh, that's going to scroll. Okay. Sorry, getting used to the clicker. We have 3 pages of the investment report prepared by the Finance Officer, Brenda Davis. Investments are above budget by $266,710.51 at month end. Interest earnings this year to date total $866,710.51, compared to $578,520.94 last year. We're ahead of last year by $288,189.57. Also included here, that is our distribution of our investments. And this is the distribution of the financial institutions where our money are located. Next, we have our budget to actual report by function, and this is also modified accrual. Then I have included for you several different reports, annual reports and updates. This is the tax rate sheets and the net tax capacity reports for page 24 and 25 are on pages 7 through 10. So we'll kind of flip through them quickly. A lot of numbers there. There's also a history of those tax rates, 2020 through 2025 for the county. That's attached for your records. That's also on pages 11 and 12. And taxable market value has increased by $15,447,502 from 2024 to 2025, and that's shown on the county statistics page on page 13. So we'll get there. I don't know if you could scroll that back down a little bit. And our effective tax rate is 0.42%. That's given your history there. Okay, I also included on page 14 is a taxable market value shift in the total between classifications from 2024 to 2025. That's for your information. And then also I included a spreadsheet that is 4 parcel histories that Diane had started. It's been updated yearly from 1996 to 2025. They're a little hard to read on screen, but these 4 parcels are for Xcel Energy, Northern States Power Company, in Becker, based on the net tax capacity for buildings and the electrical generating machinery only. This report shows the change in percentage of the county net tax capacity total that is NSP's portion of tax the county has been receiving on these parcels in the last 30 years. For 2025, Northern States Power, Minnesota, Xcel Energy, is the top taxpayer within the county. So I have also included the top 2025 taxpayers. The top 25 of those are included there. And in your county mailboxes yesterday, I did send you the top 25 taxpayers for 2025, easy for me to say, by township, city, and school district. So I kind of exploded your mailboxes, sorry about that. And that is what I have for you today. Any questions?
No. Thank you. Very, very clear and succinct.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Schumacher.
Thank you for sending all that information to our email boxes. It was, it took you time to put it together, or your staff, and it's very appreciative. So please send it, following through. And yeah, I received all of it. I read every single email, so I want to make sure you know that, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
That feedback's.
Staff that did it.
Yeah, and that feedback's really important because
Yep.
it does take extra work, and we debate every year, is it worth the effort? So your feedback is really important on that.
Yeah.
It is. And staff does work very hard to put these numbers together. It obviously is not just me, so.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Halls.
just a quick curiosity question. Do you know roughly on the residential side, how many residential homes, the number there are in Sherburne County?
Sherburne? I do not.
Dan and I can probably talk
That
about
might, yes, we definitely could.
Well, the only reason, I'm just curious because Elk River's been approving or have approved or in the process of approving some pretty large developments, and I'm just trying to get an order of magnitude of what that represents is all.
Yep. I was gonna say, the assessor, that would be a part of theirs, so, yep.
Any other questions? We need a motion to approve the Auditor Treasurer's report.
Motion to
Commissioner
approve.
Schumacher motions.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Felber seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes. Thank you,
Thank you very
Lorraine.
much.
Number 10, consider approval, termination of existing bond council agreement and approval of a new agreement with Kutak Rock. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Now, remember, there's some irony here that you started your regular agenda with appointing attorney and you're ending it with firing an attorney. So I just want to note that for the record. Oh, shh. I didn't have to say that too, but
Approval of a new,
all right.
go ahead, Dan.
On that note, I want to publicly congratulate Kathy on her retirement. Thank you for everything you've done. I don't have many phone numbers memorized, but yours is one I do, so thank you for everything you've done.
Dan, I just want you to know there's going to be a lot of cost savings because I don't have to order as many red ink pens.
I'll just leave that one alone.
Yeah, I will.
Thank you. Occasionally, we are approached to issue tax-exempt conduit bonds to assist in financing of several projects. On the RBA, I did include our policy and some of the projects we've accomplished in the past or helped with in the past. Our bond counsel that we have utilized for the last 10 years, since 2016, we are very happy with the work that they performed. We ask questions, they know answers, they don't have to do a lot of research. And recently, they transitioned to a new firm. So with that, I am requesting that we terminate their agreement with Kennedy and Graven
That's correct.
and then move it to Kutak and Rock. And the rates are very similar. We do not pay any of these costs. These are all the applicant costs, so the only cost to the county is staff time in the attorney's office and admin. The next 12 months, the rates are identical, and then they would add $5 per hour for the next 2 years of the contract.
So Kennedy and Graven merged with Kutak and Rock. Is that what I'm getting at? Is that
If
what
I
you're
may,
saying?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, what happened was Sophia Leike has been our contact person with Kennedy and Graven.
Yep.
She was the successor to John Utley, who was the successor to, can't think of the gentleman's name. Anyway, so we've been working with them for quite some time. What happened was their municipal bond unit went as kind of a whole and moved over to Kutak Rock.
Okay.
And so our recommendation then, since the contract itself was held with Kennedy and Graven and not the individual, our recommendation to this board is to cancel that contract and move with Sophia Leike over to Kutak Rock. And the contract, you're going to see the motion here, you're going to see it for the HRA, and you're going to see it on all three of your agendas. And it's all the same motion, but the contract is actually done in each of the individual entities. So that's why you're seeing the repetition.
Kennedy and Graven, right?
So
They're still that law firm,
they will not be with the law firm of Kennedy and Graven.
but
They'll-
Kennedy and Graven's still available.
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right,
Um,
got it.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion to approve the termination of the existing bond council agreement and approve a new agreement with Kutak Rock LLP to act as bond counsel for a 3-year period commencing June 1st, 2025 for the County of Sherburne, Sherburne County HRA, Sherburne County EDA, and Sherburne County RRA, with the board chair and the county administrator to sign.
Can we make that motion even though we're not in the HRA meeting?
I think we'd recommend you just make it for the
You can-
EDA and the county board.
Well, actually, the EDA is going on Thursday.
Hold on, Kathy's going to give us her advice.
You will have a meeting coming up for the Regional Rail Authority, and you have a meeting coming up for the HRA, which is the three entities. It was the county, HRA, and Regional Rail Authority, so.
We'll have to do it 3 times.
Yeah, do it
EDA also, but
the
they'll be
EDA.
voting on it on Thursday at our
Yep.
EDA meeting.
Okay.
So the way I read my motion is okay? Or do I need to just refer to this for the,
Only for the county.
for Sherburne County? Okay. I will amend that motion to read for the county of Sherburne.
Thank you.
And I'll
Have a
second.
motion of what Rayanne said.
I second.
Second it?
Commissioner Hull seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
You get to make it 2 more times.
We're going to revert back up to number 5 to Commissioner, I did it,
Again,
Administrator Messelt. You did it too.
Thank you so much.
Big day.
I'll hold off on legislative updates until the brief workshop, unless you just want me to hammer through them now, but I'll let you defer to that. Just a couple updates on announcements. First of all, looking at the calendar call, just making sure everybody's updated. We did add the workshops as you've requested them. If you see anything missing, just let Keisha and I know so that we can make sure that we track what you want to do. Dan and I will be starting budget discussions with departments next week. And part of that is flavored upon the previous conversation you had, as well as what's happening with the governors and the legislative budget. But, you know, our direction is going to be to look at a very, very tight budget scenario next year and have the departments start looking at that. In addition, when we come back to you, probably second meeting in May, Dan, and I'll give you an update, we've already started to take some, I'll call administrative actions to make sure that the levers are retained and kept for some of the things that we have for discretionary spending, just given the outlook of what we're seeing nationally at the state and potentially locally. So a little more in flavor with the conversation we had the last time. Second of all is a note that we will be pursuing a couple of prescribed burns this summer or spring, including 2 here at the Government Center with the prairies. So this is all being managed and proctored by the Parks Department with the help of Public Works, and in our particular case here, the Elk River Fire Department. It's a very, very good opportunity to communicate and to educate folks on the value of those kind of very specific prescribed burns. So I'll give you more information as it comes forward so that you're aware of that. And I don't have hours or days because it's dependent on weather and in particular wind. So we'll be working in close coordination with that. Third, the Veterans Service Office wanted to highlight for you thanks again for today and the proclamation, but also those who are able to wear purple today in recognition of Veterans Children's. And then also to note, and hopefully for your information and advertising, that they are now holding regular hours at the Sherburne County History Center on Wednesdays from 9 to 3. Appointments are encouraged, but it's a great opportunity for folks to not have to travel all the way to Elk River if they're closer in there as well. Also related to that, with your authority a couple weeks ago, we have affected the transfer of the veterans' vehicles to the VA in St. Cloud, and it's going to be a seamless transition for our veteran services, so we're very excited about that as well. And then finally, just an update I wanted to give you on North Star. A couple things. Had a chance to sit in on a conversation with Commissioner Zelli and our local cities. They've now moved since that to launching a public feedback effort. And so you should have received that directly from the North Star folks. If you didn't, I'll send it out again. But there's basically going to be 3 or 4 events coming up. The most important one is there's a virtual survey and there will be a virtual town hall. But the most local one we'll have here is on the 29th of April from 5 to 7 p.m. in Anoka City Hall. There'll be a meeting to talk about the future of transit services in this area. And then they're also going to ride the North Star Link and the North Star train on a date to be determined. So they'll physically ride it to talk to the folks who use it for normal commuting. What is very clear, absent any response from the public feedback, is that every anticipation is commuter rail service will end. And that will probably include immediately the termination of the North Star Link from St. Cloud to Big Lake. What's being discussed is the possibility of future bus service. And I'm going to be very particular on that. That means local bus service. And the conversations are about how buses can replace the service to the areas that are serviced currently by North Star. However, the Met Council has also made it clear that any conversation about bus service out to Big Lake is going to have to be a larger conversation since we're not in their jurisdiction. Some conversation about a long-term future which could include bus rapid transit. Those are dedicated bus lines or what you and I might call express buses. So if you go from local bus to an express bus and then BRT, and of course, long-term conversation about possibly intercity rail, which would go from St. Cloud to Minneapolis with perhaps 1 or 2 stops, but not including all of the North Star stops. So at this point, they're actually in a process to start preparing for disposition of assets. That would mean that MnDOT may take some assets. That means that they're talking about disassembling platforms in Elk River and in Big Lake. So they're moving fairly quickly. Again, we expressed our concern that the elected officials have not been included. For whatever reason, that continues to fall on deaf ears. So our next opportunity will be the public communication survey, and I've continued to ask for a specific meeting for Sherburne County and our partners. The problem is that, again, the lead agency is the Met Council, and they're like, yeah, sorry. So once we start talking to MnDOT, or our state legislators, we're going to have a better receptivity to that. Rhiannon, you had a question.
I did. So then I'm assuming that discussion they had with mayors and city councils did not include the city of Elk River or the city of Big Lake.
The meeting that I attended was organized by the Anoka administrator, and it was a request for all the cities in Anoka County to be involved. So Coon Rapids, Anoka, Ramsey, and the county were on the call, but it was all staff. There were no elected officials. And by request, they included Big Lake and Elk River and Sherburne County. So we were able to be on the call. But again, the Met Council's position is the legislature gave us jurisdiction. So our biggest argument is you need to include Elk River. Cal's been very involved in that. I know the mayor's been briefed that we'd like at a minimum that any bus service that replaces it go at least to Elk River. What we've learned is that there's going to have to be a larger conversation, and it has to include MnDOT. And also for our particular purposes, it includes the St. Cloud Regional Transit Authority, because the buses come out of St. Cloud for our North Star Link. So we're arguing for a seat at the table. I think we'll get one, but just so you know, the focus is primarily on the metro, and they're really not even focusing on Anoka County. I mean, they're basically getting rid of a service.
And I was just curious, I've noticed there's been increased cars parked at the North Star parking lot in Big Lake. And I didn't know, is there any correlation to the governor having employees come back to working?
I'm not aware. I can sure ask if ridership has changed. Chrissy, of course, gives you guys the numbers, but that's a good question. Again, I'll float those dates to you, but the most local one, again, is the 29th if you want to attend. And again, we do have a request in for Commissioner Zelli to either reconvene the policymaking group which we're a part of, or get on a call with you or representatives of you as well as the city elected officials. Because I think we have 3 communities, Sherburne at writ large, Big Lake, and Elk River, that are very interested. And then if we go out to the link, then we'd include our St. Cloud partners as well, so. Okay, and then with that, I will defer to legislative updates for the other details. Unless you have any questions overall? Okay, and then April 30th, you've all got the notice for the soiree up in the Emergency Services Office for Kathy, so.
Over.
Over, next door, in Emergency Operations Center.
All right, Commissioner correspondence. Who's first?
Oh,
Brad's going first.
Mine was, I testified at the Capitol on behalf of the Highway 10 corridor and County Road 11. We did that with State Representative Meckland. If you got a chance to watch it, it was extremely impactful. He opened it up in just in a phenomenal way, and did a really good job. And then we also we brought down the engineer, Dave Rodell. Dave Rodell, and Dave did really good because he actually has an ongoing relationship that he had known the chairman of the committee, Mary, from 10 years ago. And so she was great to see him, and it was very impactful. I will say this.
You did a great job, too.
Yeah, thank you. And the big thing is, regarding this, is it broke up the monotony. There are a lot of people on that come into that committee, and they do it via Zoom, and it is not effective. The room falls apart as you watch the state legislatures. I mean, I give credit to both the Republicans and Democrats on the team, but when you get on there and there's somebody that's up on the screen, the room itself just kind of falls apart because they're not as attentive. And so like when Rep. Mecklen came up, he broke the monotony of the room, and like everybody paid attention and everybody stayed on point. And so it was very, very good. And then I spoke earlier in the morning with the Avivo group on behalf of them, and sponsoring that. That went very well because, again, that's Chairman Knorr of the committee, and it's his sponsored bill. And so I was able to do that with Chairman Knorr. And then the Avivo staff and leadership was very thankful for our support across the board of all 5 of us, and thankful that I was able to come and testify that. I felt like that went very, very good too, even if we were the last up, because we had the chairman of the committee as the sponsor of the bill. And so that was very good. And then fast forward to my 3.5 hours at the British House of Commons, which was an eventful time. I will say this, as it is a public
Which is an official county position, right?
It's an official capacity of what you would do if you're a tourist and you actually had this role in your job, that you would take that to come. But I knew that I was not in my realm when we all walked in at opening, and 3.5 hours later, I was the only one left at the House of Commons watching them get up and debate. And so it was very good. It took me back to my time at Baldwin when they stand up and they have a conversation that's very directed at one of the party, whether it's the Labor Party or the Tories. And so it was very good. It helped me with you guys as well, just to have a conversation instead of yelling at one another, because they yell from back and forth. But it was very interesting, and I would say that there's many things learned from that 3.5 hours when I looked around and realized I was the only one left on the podium up on top. But that, and then the last thing was that the election did pass overwhelmingly in the city of Baldwin to sell alcohol, both on sale and off sale, on Sundays. And so there was a very good outing, as in more people came to that election than came to all of our township elections for Township Day, Township Minnesota Day, for the amount of voters that came out on an off election. But that's all I had.
I just have one comment in watching or listening, or not, reading some of the comments, that people don't understand that is a process that by statute you have to do. Not something that Baldwin just decided, I'm going to do this. It's by statute, and so many people don't realize that.
Yeah.
You have to, by statute, approve the Sunday liquor licensing.
Yep.
Through that, yeah.
Commissioner Felber?
Sure. Let's see, 4.2, NACO Public Safety, probably the biggest things come out of that were the federal disaster bill was moving forward at that time. I haven't kept track. And then there was a 2-year extension of the National Flood Insurance Bill. 4.9, Rural Action Caucus, the NACO Rural Action Caucus. They had a presentation from the National Rural Health Association. They did a lot of the things we already know, low numbers of doctors and facilities in rural areas. They're concerned about cuts in CDC funding for public health. These are all things we're all watching. Wait to see what comes out of legislatures at both state and federal level. Then they had a discussion on Community Development Financial Institutions Program, which is an alternative loan program. But one of the things that they didn't discuss in there in this alternative loan program was a default percentage. And I think that that's something that you should know. If you're getting any sort of public money to give people loans, you should know what's happening with your default percentage. Minnesota Intercounty Association, really, we talked about what legislation is coming through, what we're looking for. Nobody really knows yet. I don't think there's much going on. Could probably be some shifting of funds in human services, which everyone is concerned about. I've got a lot of notes, but there's not much to reading through it at this point in time because everything is very, very fluid over at the Capitol. I sat in on a Great Plains Institute initial meeting about in the PUC docket about waste to energy, biomass, and carbon capture. It's an ongoing series. It's going to be about 9 hours or 12 hours of meetings. So I'm going to be tracking that. Not much to talk about it right this minute. And then the other stuff I did was basically go to fundraisers. Went to the Rivers of Hope Gala fundraiser. Was very well attended. They had a lot of people come. I think it went really, really well. I went to the Getaway Bar Easter Bunny Brunch. There was a lot of people there. That was a great event for our little town of Orac. And then I went to a Wheels of Honor and Minnesota Military Family Foundation fundraiser in Maple Grove. The main reason I'm mentioning that is that I wasn't really aware of the Wheels of Honor and the Minnesota Military Family Foundation, but they're both organizations that do help to support veterans and their families. So keep those folks in your thoughts and look for their activities in the future. I spent a lot of time on reviewing some studies on mining coal ash, some other energy stuff, which is really super interesting. There is some experimental work being done in mining coal ash for rare earth minerals. And depending upon where the coal came from determines your percentage. But what they're trying to do now is figure out economic effective ways of mining this coal ash, because it could be upwards of, it's billions, as much as $500 billion worth of rare earth minerals are inside our coal ash. So we can figure out a way to effectively extract it. We don't want to spend $600 billion to get it out, obviously. So if we can figure out ways to do that, that might be something that will directly affect us in the future, and I'll be following that stuff. And then going to the last week of my NACO leadership program this week. So,
Commissioner Halls. Saving the best for last, Rand.
Just one more thing. So we started out with the Mississippi watershed. It's been a long day.
Joint powers.
Joint powers. So we approved the bylaws. We did have to make some modifications. They did not necessarily match up with the joint powers agreement. So there had to be some modifications to them, and then we directed staff to do a side-by-side comparison to make sure there wasn't anything that was missed. So they'll bring that back. It takes a 30-day written notice before we modify the bylaws, but that shouldn't be a significant issue. Also met with the tech steering committee for the county. That's a standing monthly meeting. It went well. There's a few things that are in transition, but I think the next meeting will have the new director at the meeting, correct?
Yeah, Drew starts Monday, by the way, so he'll go through orientation. We'll do a formal welcome on the 6th of May as well. But yeah, he'll be on board. He's actually been sitting in on meetings this week as part of onboarding, so I'm really excited about that.
Met with the Veterans Employee Resource Committee this month as well. That's a great organization that helped us sort through some of the proclamations coming up, some of the activities coming up, supporting veterans and moving forward. So that's I enjoyed that committee quite a bit. Also went to the Rivers of Hope gala. That was, as Commissioner Felper said, that was a very good event. The stories that are told there are always very, very moving. So it's a great event to go to. And then finally, from a legislative standpoint, I've been following closely the SAVE Act, which passed the House. So the SAVE Act is the federal bill to require federal for an ID for federal voting. It's passed the House. It's on its way to the Senate at this point. There is some significant misinformation, though, that's out regarding that. So there's been a lot of consternation around the fact that the SAVE Act would require real ID in order to vote. That's not true. Real ID does not meet the requirements for the SAVE Act. So the SAVE Act requires a real ID, compliant ID that also shows citizenship. Minnesota has an ID that does that. That's the enhanced driver's license. However, real ID does not require proof of citizenship. All real ID does is it shows that you have a legal reason to be in the country. So if people should be moving forward on getting real IDs to be able to get on an airplane. But if people are getting those because they think it's what they need for the SAVE Act, that's incorrect. For the SAVE Act, you need the enhanced driver's license, at least in Minnesota. That's all I've got.
Rand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. April 2nd, I attended the CentraCare Housing Cohort meeting, and that was by Zoom. And we had a lot of discussion on how we're proceeding with identifying barriers that are out there in regards to costs for housing development and things from the local jurisdictions and what it costs for their processes. So that's an ongoing meeting, and we're continuing to move through that. Just also wanted to identify that CentraCare is having their second housing summit on April 29th, and that is going to be up at St. Cloud State University Campus Rec, and that's 1117 3rd Avenue South, up in St. Cloud from 7:45 to 2:45. So looking forward to that follow-up meeting to see where all the different cohorts have found different ways to move the housing needle. And April 3rd, had my ATP3 meeting. That is Central Minnesota Area Transportation Partnership meeting, and that is always a lots of discussion. We're looking at trying to open up, possibly looking at the way the distribution of the funds are divvied out, because when you're talking about the ATP3 partnership, you are talking about a good amount of counties that are involved. And so you want to make sure that this distribution formula has not been looked at since, I want to say, 1990. And so they kind of want to open it up just to see, does something different have to be to make sure all areas are getting what they need addressed. And that will probably be a very robust discussion. I guess the last time they opened it up, it was quite contentious, and everybody wants a piece, and I don't blame them because they all have needs in their road improvements and such. April 4th, met with Big Lake Superintendent of the Big Lake School District, just to go over some things of what is happening from their end, anything that they might need for support. It was a good meeting. April 6th, I attended the Becker Big Lake Hockey Association Town Hall meeting at Lupulin. This was their third and final event in gathering information and trying to figure out how to better promote the needs of hockey arena, skating arena in the Big Lake community. Also attended April 8th, the Law Library meeting, and that was good discussion. One thing that did come up that seemed to kind of take some people by surprise that hadn't heard, that starting as of July 2026, that all forms issued will have to be ADA embedded for users with disability and with sight disability. And maybe that's why Kathy's retiring, I'm not quite sure. But it was going to, it really, is going to be a huge hurdle to get over, to embed all of the forms that are used by the public in that fashion. So stay tuned for more information. And like I said, it's July 2026 is when that is all supposed to be starting. So I have no doubt that there's going to be a lot of work being done. They did an electronic entry of court forms. That is completed and working, and then reviewed and completed our contract with MCLE, and then also got a reimbursement of $978 from Westlaw contract because they inadvertently terminated the wrong terminal. So they agreed that they owed us some money back. So, and then I also attended on April 9th, the NACO CEWD committee, and then also that evening attended the Big Lake Township meeting. And at the township meeting, they did have a brief conversation in regards to the siren, and they did form a committee. I was happy to see that they've got 2 of their supervisors that are charged with discussing this. They've already had a meeting with us at the county, and they are looking forward to having the conversation going forward as to how the emergency siren system will work in the future. And I think, was that it? Probably closed my book prematurely. Hang on, bear with me. April 10th, I had an APO board meeting in Sauk Rapids. At that meeting, we had Lynn Watashek come down. She gave a presentation to the APO board in regards to the mining operation. She really gave a really good presentation. And one thing that I did notice, and I did talk to Lynn about after the next morning, that when she was talking about the stakeholders that they have gathered at the table to have these conversations with, I noticed that BNSF was not part of those stakeholders. And I recommended that they need to be a part of this. When you have that amount of truck traffic that's going to be crossing that railroad crossing, and when I paid particular attention on the way home to County Road 65 and how it is in regards to Highway 10, there is very little give when you turn off Highway 10 to get a gravel truck across that without impacting the traffic on Highway 10. So she was going to reach out and figure out how to get a hold of someone at BNSF to be a part of this discussions, because anywhere from 250 to 350 trucks a day in high time crossing that area, BNSF needs to be a part of the conversation. I don't know if everybody's seen the video of the Sleepy Eye situation where the grain truck was coming off of, I think, 55, and basically same situation, very tight, where right there is where the tracks are, and literally split that tractor in 2. And I would hate to see that happen in a situation with a gravel truck. So, so going forward, stay tuned for more information on that front. And I also did attend the Rivers of Hope fundraiser for domestic violence, and I concur with it was a great turnout. It's always one of my favorite supports to do yearly, and it is very true. Some of those victim impact comments are really heartbreaking, brings tears to your eyes. So I think that's it. Yep, I'm done.
Okay, just want to remember, April 15th, today, it's tax day.
Already paid them.
But it's actually National Laundry Day also. Just wanted to
Oh,
make
there we go.
everybody aware of that. April 2nd, I met for the county attorney with HR and Martin McAllister. April 3rd, we had the county attorney interviews. April 3rd was the substance abuse seminar up in Zimmerman for tobacco and cannabis. They had a DEA representative there. They also had a personal story from someone in regards to losing a son in regards to the drug overdose and fentanyl. The slideshow and that program was very moving. And for us to see that, I think as a group, for board members, would impact how you are going to look at your tobacco and cannabis ordinance in regards to that. I think it was just very good. Then again, we had more candidate interviews for the county attorney on the 7th. On the 8th, I did the innovation in housing cohort models. That's the same one that Rayanne talked about for different cohort, but it's the same coalition with the Center Care. Again, their term is going to be April 29th. They're going to have their larger meeting. We had another county attorney candidate meeting on the 8th. Also on the 8th, I had lunch with the TRICAP executive director. She's new within the last 6 months to a year, so that was fun to meet her. On the 8th, I also did the technology steering committee, which I know about technology and me are not what you'd say best friends. So it's always fun to listen to those people talk way above my head, but I get that they're vitally important. Greg touched on the MICA board meeting that we had. I had the coffee and conversation with the Shack. They talked about the groundwater. Again, they talk about the nitrates in groundwater in southeast Minnesota. I understand the complexity of it down there, but it also nitrates in groundwater is prevalent throughout the state, and I think it needs to be addressed and looked at that way. Also on the 10th, I attended the Soil and Water Conservation District. And one of the highlights of my couple of weeks was I did a tour of Northern Metals with Jerome Doty from Planning and Zoning. That was a lot of fun. How they separate metal, how that works. Took us up into the control booth and how they are loading them. And it looks like some of those claws that they use look like something out of Terminator. They really do. I mean, it is quite a facility if you ever get a chance there. Also on the 10th, I hosted a town hall meeting in Clear Lake. Would have liked attendance been more prevalent, but it was still a good discussion. We actually had a XL representative there, employee, talking about the IPAWS situation and why the sirens are going to get eliminated from them. So that was a good meeting. Then on the 14th, yesterday, I had a meeting in regards to the Farm Family of the Year, which there's a lot of good candidates, but I think we've narrowed it down to one, and we'll find out if that family agrees to be the Farm Family of the Year for Sherburne County. That's all I had.
Mr. Chair, just thinking, should we add a future workshop on North Star and public transportation, just so that we have a chance to discuss it and have a consensus position to provide to staff?
Yeah, I think that'd be good. I got to jump on at 12 noon. I scheduled a one-on-one with them to kind of work through our specific issues. So I'll, as soon as that's done, but we'll have a workshop then to keep you updated.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to reconvene. We're not going to take a break, I don't think. We're going to open the Regional Rail Authority meeting. And I need, to do that, I need to approve the regular proposed agenda.
I'll make a motion. I'll second it.
We got a motion by Commissioner Schumacher, Commissioner Felber seconds to accept the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? First thing on the agenda, approve the Regional Rail Authority minutes.
I make a motion.
I'll second it.
The same. All those in favor?
Aye.
And then we're back to considering approval of termination of existing bound council agreement administration. What we talked to before.
Exact same request, yep.
Exact same request.
Rayanne?
Ryan?
Yep. I will make a motion. I'm waiting for Keisha to find it. There we go. I'll make a motion to approve the termination of the existing bond council agreement and approval of a new agreement with Kutak Rock LLP.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Can I get a clarification on who seconded?
Greg Felber. And now we got an update on likely North Star commuter rail service termination.
And I already did that for you.
We already did that? We're gonna move to close.
Motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Commissioner Hulse to close the Regional Rail Authority meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Now we're gonna open up, as soon as I find it, the Housing and Redevelop meeting. We need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We have the motion to approve the agenda. First number, approve the County Housing Redevelopment Authority meeting minutes from January 25th.
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Hulse,
Second.
second by Commissioner Felber. All those in favor?
Aye.
Consider approval of termination of existing bond agreement, administration approval of new agreement with Kutak Rock. Rand.
I will make a motion to approve the termination of the existing bond council agreement and approval of a new agreement with Kutak Rock LLP.
I will second.
And Commissioner Felber seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Move to close the Housing Development Authority meeting.
I make a motion?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to close the Housing Authority meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned for that. Adjourn the regular meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Wait, one thing before we can, this is your last meeting.
Yep.
Would you like us to do anything special for you? Would you like to? She wants cookies. And with that, I'll bring the gavel down on County Attorney Kathleen Haney's last meeting.
Yeah, take them upstairs. Yes.
So, Andrew, it's 217 relative homestead homes within our county this year.
Okay.
So it's 217. And if you send Michelle an email, I sent her